welcome in this first panel of the Geneva Digital Market. It will be a day that will be fully in English. It's a real pleasure to be here in this special year and to propose this new formula of the market. This new formula inserts itself in what we propose as the GIF. It's my first year here, and we really want to communicate that we want to be a place where we can discuss, we can reflect on a new conception of what could be or what is the notion of 7 art in the light of the new technology that arrives on the market, but also in the light of the change that occurs in the behaviors of the audience. That's really important for us. So we came with a new formula for this GDM. It has been put at the center of the festival constellation. From this year on, it will be proposed on an hybrid format. All the talks will be available today after they occur on our website, and our digital market will be will occur here in person in Geneva, but will also be available from professional abroad through the application Meet to Match. We will create highly curated meetings on this app. Sorry. So, what we want to do, why we invest so much energy and attention in those propositions. We want two things. We want to make connection between the people, the professional, the classical professional of the classical audiovisual, the people that works in the field of innovation, and also the creators. This is our goal. And the hybrid proposal is also to propel always farther and further the project, the numerical digital project we have in the market. This approach is really meant to break the compartment in the audiovisual. Unleash imagination, unleash potential, seize opportunities. This is what we try to do with this special hybrid format and this setup that was put in place with our technical and venue partners that I really want to thank. Immersis, it's the society that proposed the audiovisual technologies behind the talks. La Fondation Le Plaza, which lent us this absolutely fabulous location, and Appia Studios. So thanks to all those people that really helped us to propose this special setup, let's say. And I also want to thank everyone that made this market possible, the team. Obviously, Paola Gazzali Marilelli, she's the head of the digital program in the festival, but also the professional programs. Joséphine Bory, she's the coordinator of the GDM, and Marion, which is the program officer. Of course, I was thinking to Zoé Nguyen and all the production team and all the team of the festival, which is, of course, 100% behind the market. Last but not least, I'm very happy and also thankful to him. I want to introduce you our first moderator. He will lead us in our first panel. And this panel is organized with the Focal Foundation. He is a quite special character. He's an Estonian international media industry expert, and is also our precious industry correspondent. His name is Sten Christian Saluver. He worked as a producer. He was also industry advisor for really several A-list festivals. He teaches, and he also innovates and fosters in the realm of the industry. He was he was founder and also gave a lot of energy to several acceleration and innovation hubs around the world. And more recently, you can see his name attached to the Marché du Film de Cannes, where he's a strategic advisor for the Cannes Next, and he's also the CEO of Storytech. So please welcome Sten on stage. Thank you. Have a good day.
Merci, Anaïs. So, bonjour. Bonjour. Great, now I have your attention. So, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Anaïs, for this wonderful introduction. My name is Sten Saluveer, and I am the curator for today's session, and also tomorrow's session, where we will be exploring more in deeper ways where the technologies of creation, production, and distribution are heading. To kick off this day, I have one question for you. And can anyone tell me what 891 million means in the present 2 or 3 weeks context in the creative or audiovisual industry? 800, one number, 891 million. Anyone? Any guess? It's about money. Yes. Who said money? Gentleman in the front. Thank you. What money and for whom? And related to what? I can also give another hint that the money is connected to something that will be discussed later, actually later today, if I'm not mistaken, here at the GDM. Yes, David, correct. Something at Netflix. What at Netflix? Okay, let's take the last temperature check. Okay, so 891 million is the revenue already generated by the South Korean television series Squid Game to Netflix. And does anybody remember how much, by average, was the content budget of Netflix? Even a year, by average? No, cold. Yeah, it's about 15, how much? Yeah, it's quite a lot. So if you imagine 891, so it's 1/15 of the whole annual content budget of Netflix coming out of one TV series. So we also have to understand, and why I'm making this example here, is that those types of examples show us that our industry is changing very, very rapidly, and it's having a very, very strong intersection of different forces. It's about very strong, yes, audiovisual, scripted, feature-length content, right? The production of the Squid Game, as some of you might have read, the first script was developed almost 10 years ago and was supposed to be a feature film inspired by Battle Royale rather than a TV series. So yes, we do have a very strong scripted content. The actors and actresses who play in Squid Game, quite famous, top league, and etc. At the same time, of course, we understand that it's about technology, right? It's about reaching new audiences effectively and globally. And we are in an unprecedented time where, according to Mary Meeker, who is an analyst for Bond Capital, if there is one name you want to take home today, Mary Meeker, she has her annual Internet Trends report. Right now, we have about 95% of the world is connected to consume content. So we have unprecedented connectivity, and the number 3 is new type of business model. So it's not anymore going to cinema and buying your ticket, but it's basically doing your memes, selling the NFTs. The whole Etsy or the whole YouTube market is full of possibilities of buying your Squid Game Halloween mask. How fast did this happen? So we're really looking at the ways how the content and the film industry is getting into a new type of economy. At the same time, I have to give you a very cold shower. It's already a little bit chilly, so a cold shower is also very good. The EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, just recently released a study about the performance of the structural changes in the European audiovisual and cinema market. Ezra Eman has written an excellent 4-part series about this called the content crash. In the next 5 years, it is estimated that in the European theatrical and cinema sector, we are experiencing a loss of 22 billion euros. 22 billion euros. This money, of course, doesn't, vapor. The money goes somewhere. And what I'm basically trying to explore today and what we're going to explore today is some of those shifts. I think the baseline is clear. Our creativity will persist. People will always want to hear great stories. But the place how the stories are produced, the place where the stories are watched, the economies, how you as a producer or a creative will monetize, will be drastically changed. And exactly what those changes are, and how to serve them, and how to be able to continue to tell those exciting stories from Switzerland and elsewhere, we're going to explore in today's session. We have quite an exciting 3 hours ahead where we're going through possibilities and seeing what happens inside the underbelly of the streaming platforms. I think you'll be very, very positively shocked to see what happens inside the whole streaming world. We're then actually going to go and talk about the big shift, how the focus is shifting from producers to audiences. And especially last year was very critical for organizations to understand that the final decision whether your film is going to be successful or not only relies with you, but relies with the audiences. So we're going to look at how to attract audiences, how to build your strategies, and how to manage in a situation where we might be ending into a post-cookie world. And what the post-cookie world is will be explained about Ben Johnson from Groovy. Then we're going to a little bit see how national film institutions and organizations can do better strategies and what will be their role in this situation. And then we're going to also look at some practical tips how to get you as a producer ready for the streaming age. And we have 2 speakers joining us virtually from the United States to give their perspective. And last but not least, we will end a little bit on the future horizon. I guess we all saw last week that Facebook is rebranding their name to Meta. Why they're rebranding, why they're doing it, what are they thinking, where this is going, and should we next year meet in virtual GDM or not? We're going to have a conversation about that. Without further ado, love to introduce our today's speakers. So from left to right, from your side, Birgit Karus, the CEO of Nor Productions. Ben Johnson is the CEO of Groovy. David Mühle, CEO of Playpilot. Augustina Lumi. Unfortunately, her plane caught fire, but she is on her way now from Madrid again, so we hope that she will manage her to be at 3 o'clock. Then Mitch Mallon, the founder and CEO of Stadium Media from the US, and last but not least, Sander Saar. He's the strategy and growth consultant for Red Bull Media House, but he was also the former director of nonlinear media at the Walt Disney Company. All right, sounds exciting, yes? Let's get going. David.
All right, can you hear me? Loud and clear, fantastic. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sten. So obviously I'm David. I'm working for a company, it's a Swedish startup called Playpilot. You can check it out on the web if you like. And I'm going to talk about where's the digital audience and try to understand a little bit more about what the audience actually want to see and on what platform, etc. Which is a very broad and very hard question to answer. It's of course impossible. Thank you, Sten. But the short version here is that they want to access to it all, of course, on all platforms, all the time, so they are super picky. I'm using this, right? Yeah. So first, let's take a little bit step back and see what the situation actually is like, and dig a little bit more deep, and look at it from a consumer perspective. And this is very much what Sten already talked about, the numbers. This is like a market. Sometimes when I talk to investors in other types of media and other verticals, they say, okay, streaming is very mature, it's not going to boom anymore, etc. But that's of course not true. As you can see here, the marketing spend of Netflix just in 1 quarter, $604 million in 1 quarter. That's amazing. And it's still growing really fast. And the average household, that number is actually a little bit old, pay for at least 61% pay for at least 2 SVOD services. And these numbers are just increasing, and it's booming still. Pretty crazy. What does this lead to? I looked a little bit closer into a report from TiVo saying that the average household, or actual respondent, it says, has been growing from around 4, 5 to 9 streaming services. This is including, of course, the free ones as well. So this just creates an amazing opportunity to bring some order in this crazy space. And it's really hard for us consumers to find what to watch and where to watch stuff. And the obvious solution to all of this would, of course, be a Spotify for video. That would be an amazing product, an amazing service. But I'm sorry, but that will not happen. That it's too far away, and I'm not going to be talking about why not, but that's not going to happen. Instead, it has created a lot of problems for the consumers. So we spend more than actually it's 1.5 now, years of our lives just trying to find what to watch in this mess, which is pretty sad and an amazing number, I think. So there's currently no single trusted source, independent source of entertainment and recommendations and search. And that's, of course, a huge opportunity. And I spent the previous life, my previous career, in creating technology so it actually works to watch anything on the bus. So, you can do it whatever, whenever. But we just missed out on this little thing called content discovery. So that's terrible. That's completely broken. And even piracy. Piracy is increasing because of this, because people have this challenge. So what's really broken is search, universal search. With that I mean, okay, where can I stream the good old movie Top Gun legally in Switzerland or in Spain, in whatever country. Explore, I'm really tired tonight, I want to watch a good old action movie. Where can I browse through all the legal action movies in one country? Or recommendations, universal recommendations across all the different streaming services and all the content. So it's a challenging world. Here you go. So how do people actually find content? Well, today they find content from their friends and family. Word of mouth is so strong still. Every single research report shows this. Extremely important. Second one, advertising. And third, recommendations from streaming services. All right, remember that slide. So the challenge here is, of course, this. How can we track the data? How can we track the users across all the different platforms? So to create this single interface, and that's, of course, a huge opportunity as well. And then we at PlayPilot has identified that opportunity and tried to build a service that captures all of these things in one place. So the actual product we have built is more of a streaming guide, very simply put. So we don't stream ourselves. We don't need to bother with all of the streaming problems, all the CDN, all the copyrights or anything. This is just a guide helping you to find what to watch. So then we also link directly to the respective service, which is so simple. And that makes it possible for us to overcome this and become this universal search place and explore and recommendations and all of those things. And we actually grow pretty fast, and we're live in many different countries, and we have 3 million users, et cetera, et cetera. But the really opportunity with all of this is that we gather tons of data from the service, because we are getting people to engage in the platform. Because in reality, I don't want to know what Netflix recommends me, or even PlayPilot. I want to know what Ben is watching right now, or what Sten. That really matters. This word of mouth thing is so powerful. So we really try to get people to engage in the platform and do their ratings, do reviews, etc., as much as we can. So what do we actually know about our users? Well, we know that this is a male guy. We know that this is, we know what streaming services they subscribe to. We even know what genres they're interested in, or specific shows. We know what intent they have, because they use functions like watch listings, etc. They write reviews, they connect with others in the platform. So all of this data we collect in different ways. And of course, we can use it to give better recommendations to PlayPilot, but it's not only that. We created a tool called Gravity. So this is more of the back end of the whole consumer experience that I just showed you. It's the same data, it's the same catalog data, it's the same metadata and everything. But you can just access it from another angle and ask different questions to Gravity. And this helps us to better understand what the audience in real time, more or less, want to watch, what's their intent, and what genres are doing really well, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a business intelligence tool. And we're typically, our customers to this tool is typically like a streaming service. It could be a film institute, it could be governments, investors, et cetera, that want to know more about this. So what type of data is it that we can use? This is just an overview over the Swedish streaming market. As you can see, Amazon Prime, they have 4,300 titles currently in Sweden. iTunes, Netflix, they have 4,500. And these are our customers. I need to be kind to them, but to be honest, they have sometimes problems to know what they have themselves in their catalogs. And we can slice and dice this data and help them to understand, okay, how many action movies have I invested in as a streaming provider? How many should I invest in? Because my competition, they're going in another direction, etc. And all of this information should be fairly simple, but still we are in a market that lacks this kind of basic data, usually. Not always, but many of the also big streaming services, they don't have this data, and we can use it in such a more efficient way. This is just another example. So what has been the most popular shows last 30 days in Sweden? And they can have different ways of splitting this data up. And for example, this could be data that helps a telco, a streaming aggregator, a streaming service to actually pinpoint and curate their content into a much more relevant experience for their users. And this is exactly what we're doing together with a few partners. Or, even more easy, in a way, this we call like up for grabs. What's Swedish movies, well, that are not available in Sweden legally to buy anywhere, do people actually want to watch? So this is intent data, and of course, a dream for anyone working with content acquisition. So they should probably try to get on hold of these titles as much as they can. So the summary here, to sum up a bit, data is more available than we think. And it's important for several reasons, because we can help customers and consumers with this cross-platform content discovery and recommendations. It's not only, of course, companies like us, it's in many different places you can use this to make it easier to find the content that you actually search for. And it's also very powerful because we have the ability to put very popular shows, like the one that Sten just mentioned, that everyone want to watch, but we can also put less popular shows, so niched content, next to this very popular content to make it more visual and make it more accessible to more people. Also, of course, for the streaming services, it's important for them to promote the right content to the audience and make it to the most receptive customers that they actually have, to make it more and more easy to produce content that they want to see, and also to prevent churn, which is becoming the most important KPI for most of the streaming services. It's not getting new users, it's more about actually avoiding churn. And then the third one, we're getting more and more questions from production companies. So where are we heading? Getting the ammunition, the data to bring with you as a production company, taking the decisions what to produce, etc. when you meet with other similar buyers or sellers at a festival, film festival, etc. Makes it easier to underpin your decision with that type of data, cross-platform data in real time. So that's all I had today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David. Our format today is, don't leave. Our format today is as such that we will have a kind of an ask me anything question with all the panelists later, but I would like to take a few questions. Is there any questions from the audience right now? Everything's clear. I guess the Swiss Estonian is exactly the same. No questions. Everything is always clear. Gentlemen in the front.
Hello.
Hello.
It was very fascinating what you were talking to, but me as a producer sitting here with my small films, it's like a journey to the moon.
Yeah.
To get where you are, and because I don't know how are you here as a buyer or as a representative or a midman? I didn't get.
That's a good question. I'm here just to open up that box and inspire you, talk about Play Pilot a bit, of course, but the whole idea is that start this process, what you talked about. We're sitting in a building, same building as a few production companies in Stockholm, and we're trying to figure out exactly what you said. What data points and how can we make it more accessible to more production companies? In what way? Because we want to get this out, and this is not our primary business. So we're figuring this out together, and I don't have a very good answer exactly how it would work, but I think it's...
because I had a feeling that it was like we were in food industry, and we're looking like what the people like to eat.
Yeah.
Fish or this or that, and it was very distant to me of the content of the topics. I mean, yeah, it's comedy or this or that, but I mean, I feel I kind of lost how to enter one of these boxes you have opened to be fulfilling the demands of, how can you say that, of the expectations of reaching the widest public possible. You entered with the Squid Game.
Yes.
Is that correct? And saying this fabulous number of 898 million or whatever.
91 million.
Which is just out of reach.
David.
So how can, with my documentaries or my films I have here, I can enter that field, or is it definitely just a canyon with no...
No. I think we should talk after this session. That's the whole idea, and this is why I'm here. And we cooperate, as I said, with film institutes to help to provide this data, get the data out as well. So, and this is like a process. It will take some time. The canyon is maybe there now, but maybe we can build something, a bridge.
David, can I try to make an example? And that's maybe also a cue to our next speaker. So, okay, I'm a film producer myself. I have produced about 6 films right now, actually producing a documentary as well. Well, I'm shooting right here in Switzerland. So, I guess you work with a sales agent, right? The sales agent makes an offer for your film and say, we think that the deals which might be coming to your production are, let's say, platform 1, platform B, platform C. Which type of decision I should make where you should license your film? Is this a good scenario, for example? Very classical scenario, right? I might say distributor in Germany, for example, another distributor, let's say, in France, and maybe a distributor in Poland, and then some digital platforms. How will you make a decision which digital platform your film will be available? Understanding that at the present moment, if you're a producer, the MG, that used to be the cornerstone of film financing, minimum guarantee, yes, everybody knows, that the MG in the film business is decreasing. How would you select which platform is better than another? And I think, for me, tools such as PlayPilot are extremely helpful in a sense because, first of all, it shows what type of competition I have in the platform. For example, I have absolutely no idea before David showed this to me what was available in iTunes. I had no idea. Should I put to iTunes or should I give it to my local VOD distributor if both deals are unavailable? So I understand what type of content is available in iTunes. Secondly, is on that particular platform, for example, like iTunes, is there, for example, what type of content people prefer? Are they more geared towards documentary, or they want to see my drama? If that's primarily about documentary, maybe your drama will be not doing too well on that particular platform. For example, for example, if David looked at the real-time insights, is there something else on the release schedule that is peaking right now, either to release my film today and not 2 weeks later, or perhaps actually wait for the better release time? We all used to make those decisions by our gut feeling. Right now, we have a possibility to actually look in real time, not even in real time, but very clearly in, let's say, in current time. Yeah. What are my competitors doing, and how, as a producer, I can get a better release strategy? Because we always, historically, I guess, we try to put the responsibility always to someone else. It's my sales agent, it's my distributor, it's my exhibitor, and so forth. But we all know that they are struggling, especially with COVID. So the question is, how can we all actually cooperate better on real insights of how to position the titles better? So I can imagine that that would be one type of a scenario. Where an independent producer can have a benefit. For a broadcaster, completely different type of thing, because it helps you to see what are the dynamics in the market, what type of competition there are, what is my acquisition strategy, or what is my curation strategy, in order to cut through the noise. But very good question. Yeah, we'll come back to the debate.
Thank you, Sten.
Thank you, David. Now I would like to ask Birgit Karus. Birgit is the CEO of No Production, and actually on the follow-up to your point, myself and Birgit last year, thank you.
Where should I go?
You can have a seat. Or you can actually go meet the gentleman and continue the debate.
Right.
So myself and Birgit, last year we worked with a festival client, and we all remember that 2020 was a very big year where all the festivals had to go online. Who of you attended an online festival? Okay. How many films you watched on an online festival by average? How many? 20? Oh, wow. I think you're a super exception. But anybody else? 2, okay. What's an average number? Okay, by, 2 or 3. People usually watch on online festivals about 2 and 3 movies. So I worked last year with 4 big organizations helping them to transform their festivals online. So the CPH Talks in Copenhagen, the Marché du Film or the Festival de Cannes. We had a German client together in December, and the Black Nights Film Festival, an A-class film festival in Estonia. And of course, the presumption with all of those organizations was that, hey, let's put up a VOD service, let's put the film online, and we can actually achieve the same success as we do in real life. What was the reality? And this is a very good continuation for the gentleman's argument. What was the percentage of people, can you imagine, who went to the homepage of the festival and bought the ticket and watched the movie? By average. No, Ben, you're not representative. You will talk later. But I'd just like to have a question to you. Can you put out a number? Warm. 20? I take the last one. Last number? 30, 50, 70, 20? Between 6 to 9%. Which means is 94% of the people who go to a homepage of a festival will not buy the ticket. And we had a particular client together, and the client had done everything based on the content. In other words, they had bought the best technology from the most reputable provider that also services Festival de Cannes. They did a nice design. They got the best movies that was possible to license in this particular moment of time. And 94% of people who went to the homepage of this festival did not went to see those great movies. And then, of course, the CEO of the festival and the managing director was in a real shock because they had done everything they thought to be a good distributor. So myself and Birgit, we had the unpleasant task of going into and starting to look at what was wrong. And what we discovered a lot of things. We discovered, for example, facts that, number one, producers need to do a better job. If you have a premiere of your film and you want to exhibit it digitally, do you have a poster? Do you have a metadata? Do you have a trailer? Do you have subtitles in 3 languages? Do you have a clip in YouTube? Are you doing any types of engagement campaigns yourself? So put yourself to the position of an audience. You want to see a movie. The film is not even on first page. It's the second page. There is no trailer. There is no YouTube clip. There is no homepage about the movie. How should the audience know how to buy the film? They have absolutely no point in time how to make the decision. And the movie can be great, but they don't know how to make a decision. Secondly, payment systems, for example. Some countries prefer one payment systems and other systems, and et cetera, et cetera. So what we actually found that this 6 to 9% was a statistic that repeated itself throughout the year. And what did it tell us? It tells us that it's not only about how good your film is, but it's how well you know your audience and how well you actually direct the attention of the audience to watch your movie. And Birgit will a little bit talk us about what we learned from that experience.
I put more simple case studies in.
Yes.
It's too complicated.
But inherently, she will talk about how thinking about your audience and not only thinking about your sales agent or putting the responsibility into somebody else's hand is something that will literally decide the life and death of a film. Birgit, please.
Thank you. So it should work with the green button, right? Yeah. So it now, don't look at the slides yet. Now you can look. So hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see so many people. It's first time in 2 years when I'm seeing my audience. I'm used to these Zoom things where I see only my slides and myself, which is not good when you are talking with the audience. And it's a perfect case study, actually, to show how important the audience is. And I'm here to talk about social media and what are the crucial factors you must consider if you want your film to cut through the noise. A little bit about myself. So as Sten mentioned, then I'm a founder and CEO of Noh Production, which is a digital marketing agency, not only in Estonia, but we have clients also in Germany with Sten and in US and other countries. And our approach is that we are a long-term partner to our clients to help to solve these business-related questions, like how do I engage my audience on a long term, or how do I build the sales funnels? And we serve all different kinds of companies, and I will bring you some different also case studies where actually the same problems occur. So it's not only in the film industry, it's every business is struggling with. So first of all, I would like to start with the current situation of the world. So everything is digital, and we have to get out of the mindset that who are our competitors, and we only think about the local audience. The fact is the local market, no matter which, will not bring you the same results that, for example, this Netflix Squid Game results were. You have to take the global approach. And when we think about the global competition, then there are really big players there who have a lot of money. There's a lot of information going to social media. There is like big media spends on ads, and everyone wants to be heard. And there is just too much noise for our individual brains. The audience are all individual persons, and we even don't hear it. Our brain has learned how to block information. And you can ask people, did you see like this ad last week? And many of you say no, the message was never delivered. Yes, you see some data, okay, I reached 1 million people. That doesn't mean anything anymore, and we have to accept it. So to get our message delivered, we have to speak to the individual. We have to understand who are those individuals who belong to our audience. And we need to restructure our communication plans and content so that the audience would come first. And we need to talk about what people want to hear. What are their desires, wishes, what they like, their preferences, not about what we need to talk about. We always want to talk about our product or our film is great, it's like super, we have this long story, and the fact is that we only have 15 seconds that people can't skip, and if your story is too long to get to the point, it doesn't get delivered. So the big problem is that we might do things overly complicated, and we might also make assumptions based on being too general. So now none of the solution is really good, but yeah, we have to talk to the individual. We have to connect with them on a deeper level within those 15 seconds, because otherwise we don't even get the communication going. So if you meet a person and say like, tons of facts about you, and you're not interested about the person you're talking to, there will not be a long-term relationship out of it. You have to be willing to listen and also communicate accordingly what you receive back from the other person. And this is the same with marketing, just as our personal relation. And let's see now one case study. So it's an interesting company. It's actually a food producer, pet food producer in Finland. And they have 27 stores all over Finland. And they have done the same thing like all the time. And then the COVID hit. So actually they had to start selling online all their products. And they said like, online business is not for us. It doesn't work. And we asked like, okay, what did you do? Well, we sent like 100,000 people newsletter nobody bought. And we said, okay, what was the content of this newsletter? It turned out it was this hamster, this, you know, what you put in the bed of the hamster, this thing, but it turned out that over 70% of their audience in this space were dog owners. So you were just shooting your shot and with wrong product to the wrong audience. So of course it was a fail. If you don't have a hamster at home, you don't buy it. It's the same thing in the film industry. So what we did was a really simple change. We took the social media platforms. We divided the people who have dogs, who have cats, and we showed them only things relevant to them. And wow, it worked. So it's not a rocket science. You just need to dig into the data a little bit. So how do we learn what people want, or was our message even delivered? So I would say there is so much data out there. Just take your time to read and analyze it, or ask help if you can't read it yourself, or use cool platforms. So there are tons of tools, possibilities, even if you take like social media's own tools, or you have Google Analytics, there is like 10-minute YouTube video and you can understand in general what's said there. So just read the data, do different tests, and make your communication strategy based on the testing and about the data, about the hypothesis that you have from the data. Case study about data. So again, not the film industry example, but I feel that creative sector problems are more complicated than other sectors, so I just skip those. But we had a client from Lithuania, super successful there, market leader. They came to Estonia. They just take the things that worked in Lithuania and put them into Estonian language. And they failed with really big numbers of money. So they came to us and asked, okay, well, is not Estonia our market? And we said, yes, it is, but you got it all wrong, because the people don't know who you are. The people in Estonia are not so discount-driven as Lithuanian people. The visual images were not right, and like your website has tons of things that need to be fixed in order to make it work. So you have to know also the local side of the audience, because when you want to just do it globally, we would all be millionaires already if it was so easy, but you have to have a general strategy and you have to adjust it with local differences. So it is quite common that we as businesses, we want to consider the audience in the last stages, like where we already have everything fixed and we're like, okay, whom we're going to sell it, where we are going to sell it. And it seems so easy. Then they bring in the marketing partner and then they say, we have some materials here, this is all we have, and just deal with it. And usually with this kind of approach, the results are not good. It's not a problem about the marketing partner. It's not about that the product was even like not matching the audience or was wrong or not so good. But the problem is usually that when the audience is not considered in the planning stage, then the right materials needed for marketing are not produced, and it's really expensive to produce those later. Even like big companies in the film industry, there have been examples where they forget to make the poster shot, and then they fly everybody in again just to make one photo, but the cost is already like over the budget. So I think that the most important thing to do is you think about the audience first and you consider it in the planning stage, not when everything is already ready. The right materials for good marketing are the base of a good, successful campaign. So how to do the planning right way? So first, you need to map out the customer journey, use platforms to have customer data to understand where should I be, in what stage, where I should build awareness of this thing, where should I test my marketing strategy, where I can close the deal. So there is, in every step, there is an answer, and every step also must have KPIs and budgets. Because when we have marketing plan with one budget and one general goal to sell as much as possible and be profitable, then it's not enough, because then you understand you got it wrong in the end, and then everything is lost. You have to have steps in your plan so you can adjust in the way, because you can make mistakes, like reading the data or our gut feeling was wrong. So we have to have the possibility to know in advance that, okay, it's not going to that direction where we want to go. And this was also with the film festival case, what Sten mentioned, that we had like alerts. We saw that, okay, it's not working. We need to change the strategy. What we will do now? We did another test, another test, another test. And in one moment, we got to understand what was the problem and how to solve it. So I think that you have to not only have the long-term plan and vision, but you have to have steps, and it's really important. So I would want to bring you an ideal case study. It's a huge company, probably everyone knows the Body Shop, so they are also a client of ours in the Baltic states. And this is where the planning has done right. We, as their media partner, we get all the materials we need. We get videos, we get photos, we have insights about the products, whom we should target those products. So it's really easy for us to build the ad strategy and to actually bring conversion. And their conversions are ridiculously good. So it's a perfect case how to things right. They have planned, they send the marketing partner their materials, they have everything you need there. They have videos, they have photos, different types, and with different models, for example, so you can really play around with the materials you are provided in order to make it work. And what's even better, we have so much materials that we can test what works better. Usually we are given one thing, and we cannot test with having only one thing. We need to have many different content materials that we can work with. And the last thing is, I usually talk really complicated story when I meet my clients, and they have understood that we don't have to be excellent at everything, and you don't have to do everything by yourself. If you need a data reading partner, an analyst, if you need an ad specialist, there are all these professions existing, just reach out. And I think that one thing you can't delegate, the one thing really, the only thing is that you have to prepare good input. Without good input, there can't be a good output. So it's really important to be excellent at giving input and being ready to have an answer from the other partner that you don't like, and being also willing to work together with the partner. In this way, great campaigns and great successes are achieved. So it's all from my side.
So let's talk a little bit about the movies and not Body Shop. Do you want to have a seat? I want to point a couple of points why this discussion is really, really important. So first of all, again, the 6 to 9% what we found, and unfortunately, the case with this particular festival, I think, was exemplary, where a lot of things happened in a very short amount of time, and things got right. But how those things translate into producers' life? So, for example, one of the things what we found was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that producers didn't give materials to the festival to promote their films. Usually there was, I think, one still of the film, but imagine if the festival needs to promote your film on VOD, on digital, on different format, on doing specific advertising for your film, you need different types of formats.
You have to have stills, and many stills, many videos, and even like compared to like the video, the biggest problem was also that if you produce a film, let's say in Sweden, and it's in Swedish or in Estonian, then if you have this global audience and this festival wants to promote it in Germany and also globally, then nobody will understand it. And the big thing is that people listen when it's like story format ads, and you have this Estonian language, and it's like skip. So you have to have the trailers actually voiceover in English with the real actors in ideal world, or at least subtitles that people can understand, because otherwise it's just not working. And what we saw was that we promoted many films, many, over 20. So what we saw that the films where we had the right materials, we had this ideal video, it was long enough so we could cut it and add there like some frames of the festival and other information. These films work so much better. And there where we were just like spamming people with content that they didn't understand in the wrong language, not clear enough what was shown in the video, it was too short, then we actually didn't have any results. It was basically zero. And there were like top performers who had like thousands of interested people, and then you had in this, all the other technical setup was the same, and others were in zero. So the only thing that mattered was the content and the approach to the audience.
Yes, so, yes, please.
This brings up a dilemma that I would like very much to see addressed here, because as a producer, I'm currently in the middle of judging a film festival with over 29 entries, so that's why I say
Yes.
20 is average. This brings up exactly a dilemma that I think faces producers, especially having worked in the studios and also with indies, with independent content, is that a lot of these things that you're suggesting would be wonderful in an ideal world. But when so many indies, et cetera, have even trouble meeting the budgets of getting submitted and getting their at least one differently formatted program available, it's already stretching budgets to the max, which have been compressed in so many ways because of COVID. So what I'm looking for are answers of, it would be easy if I had the money to make trailers in 20 languages or created in different formats, but it's a budgeting thing that most producers don't have huge funds for. So what I'm looking for are approaches that actually understand that dilemma that that producers face, and finds a way to move forward, but in a cost-effective manner.
It's not expensive if it's done in the right time. And I would recommend here, if your budgets are tight, just find a marketing person you like. Say that I want 2 hours of your time. It's quite cheap. You have 2 hours, you tell what you plan to do, and you get the right information. We would need this is cool, this wouldn't work. So maybe it's 4 hours, but you have, for this time, you already have input what you need, and then you can adjust what you can do with it. And I think it's also having the partners in early, not giving them just here you go, here's something, but having them in early will help you to save budgets and also to get things right. So that's my recommendations.
Yes, from a producer's perspective, I think here's 2 points I'd like to address. So the first is sort of me speaking as a kind of maybe directed to the film, if there's any film funds or curators or commissioners here. If we usually look at our average funding structure, how much money we're actually giving out to marketing. Most of the grants are purely production grants, right? And the 6%, to be very honest, when we saw this number, our client was in real trouble. This is no joke. For them, this was a question of life and death, whether this festival can continue. And they did everything right. They curated the films, they wanted to invite the best directors, and etc. And if the mechanic is changed, then this is the reality. So we had to go in, and of course we then understood that there were several things which also producers can address early on. So first of all, exactly what Birgit says, some rudimentary material. We're not, maybe 20 trailers is it's, of course it's too much, but, having a conversation with your DOP that on the set, I would probably have something 20 to 50 images taken by the DOP on the set for my image pool. Simple enough thing, right? I would have one cut of the trailer, either on a mood board or just, representative images of the tone and artistic message of your production, for example, without voiceover, that can be adjusted for graphics on top. You know, small, if you look at your feature editing budget, I would say 2 to 4 hours of work on the editorial department, not so significant, but in later promotion, it can do a lot of interesting things. Also, the other thing, of course, it depends on the release strategy of your film. One other thing, of course, is to release a kind of a very, very small teaser, for example, in YouTube or Facebook, and just to see who watched this teaser to identify what is going on there. And why we're pointing out this case? Quite often our gut feeling and the reality, of course, and Ben will come and talk about his case study of Parasite and maybe a little bit in the Q&A, what we perceive the audience to be in that new digital VOD space is completely different than in reality, right? We expect the festival audience, usually female, over 30, higher education, interested in culture, quite spending. What we, for example, found out, and the gentleman was producing documentaries, the average watcher for our not our festival, but the festival we helped was a young male in early 20s, because they specifically wanted to look at some interesting documentary content that fit them. So the reality versus what we thought, completely different. And also talking about budgets, we run some small experiments. Yeah. I think it was about 100 euros. Like
even less, I think
even
it was
less, 50 euros,
yeah.
100 euros, that type of range to then understand what are those keywords and what are those topics that helps to get those independent films out. And we were talking about low budget, Southeast Asian, European, Eastern European productions, and those investments of maybe 300 to 400 euros were providing significant change to the reality. So, and one last thing I want to also say is that when you go out with your digital distribution strategy, think about a poor festival. Because the festival, if you think about the value chain, the festival comes the last. And I have to say that they have to solve all the problems for you. If you don't have materials, if you don't have trailer, the sales agent don't have them, and then the festival has to integrate it. They have to upload it into online, they have to promote it. And sometimes they are very much struggling with this. And I think the better, and you, of course, as a producer or a director, would like to see a lot of audiences to come and join the film. And I think it's perfectly right. But we need a little bit more, I think, collaboration of everybody thinking about 5% more and maybe telling you to your sales agent that, okay, maybe let's reduce the sales commission budget and put it into marketing experience, because that's helped us to better reach our targets.
Yes.
We have more questions to Birgit later, but
thank you.
Ben, this is exactly what your company is doing.
All righty. Just while the presentation's loading, how many of you guys work as producers but also work downstream for your film? Either you have a VOD platform, or you're a part owner in a cinema, or you work within distribution. Is everyone here straight production? Okay. So a relatively small proportion of people. Okay. So one of the things that we're hearing about here is that film actually has a very complicated value chain, right? You have producers that herd cats and make movies. You have sales agents that then represent those movies to distributors. You have distributors that then take those films and try and get them out into cinemas. Then you have VOD platforms and festivals, and there's very little crossover between each part of the value chain. My feeling is that the production side of the business is going to really boom over the next 10 years. You know, as we saw from David's presentation and from what Sten was also talking about, there's more and more money entering production. We have a massive discovery problem. And I think a lot of this can actually be solved by just doing good marketing and also beginning to understand that from your film being produced, we're no longer really living in an environment where it's just good enough to make a movie and just chuck it out there. You're going to have to look at what happens downstream for film. So understanding who your potential acquirers are and the nightmares that they go through is something that I think is very useful to have as a concept in your mind. So someone who's working traditionally on the buying side, whether they be at a VOD platform or a distributor's, has rights issues to manage, particularly if they're exposing the film in their market. They want to know that they have exclusive rights to it. They also want to understand what the audience potential is. And this element of marketing and audience targeting, I think we're going to keep on going back to here, because it answers a lot of the questions that you might have in the back of your mind, as the lady here raised. By the way, a short answer to the marketing question. I've got friends working in production. As soon as they put the budget into the line item as under marketing, it's raided the moment the film production has an issue. One of the ways that they've got around it is they've put the marketing budget into things like buying computers and cameras and stuff like that, and therefore it's not the first thing that gets raided when there's an issue. Anyway. All right, so your stakeholders downstream from your production have a series of nightmares and challenges that they're all trying to overcome. And one of the big things is understanding who the potential audience is for your product. To just give you a quick idea of how the market is changing after the pandemic, we used to live in a world where it was all about brand, and it was all about awareness. This idea, if we make enough people aware of the film, or this product, or this mousetrap, or this widget, then people will come knocking at my door to buy it. And in actual fact, what we're seeing right the way across the market is online audiences are incredibly fickle, which would be defined as having a very, very short attention span, and moving on immediately to something else if you haven't engaged them in the first few seconds. And it's being reflected in these Nielsen numbers here, where audience targeting is all of a sudden becoming the most important part of the marketing cycle. And what we're going to be hearing over the next few years is everything is going to start to be about performance. So, as producers, there are a number of tools and strategies out there that you can employ to try and find out who your potential audience might be. And you can do this at pretty much any cycle of the production, but obviously the earlier the better. So we have a part of our consultancy business where we go out and we can look at almost the script stage and start to figure out, okay, where is the audience, what are they interested in, and how are they communicating? And here's a short extract from a report that we did on Mamoru Hosoda, the very famous anime director, in relation to their upcoming release of the movie Belle. And this was, the sales agent had commissioned us to come in and try and find out where this film would potentially have the most interesting markets. Now, we used tools called, like Brand Watch, for instance, which is basically monitoring the fire hose of conversations that are going on online. And we can then use the tool like Brand Watch to actually monitor what the sentiment is around those conversations as well. And this allows us to then start to pick out certain keywords that are associated with the film or the feeling towards the director. We can see what the gender breakdown is, sort of roughly, in terms of who watches Mamoru Hosoda's films. And we can also see where the trending topics and conversations around Hosoda and his productions are, and kind of how relevant these are to the actual film. And this allows us to kind of see where the associations are in the marketing, right? With the kinds of tools that we have here, we're able to kind of pinpoint, okay, what should the creative strategy potentially be, who the audience is, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. And most importantly, kind of where they're located. So if the sales agent was approaching an American distributor, part of the pitch would be, we also know which territories to focus on where we're going to be releasing the film. We can also, using things like Watson AI, start to pick out what kinds of personality types the audiences might match to. And this is incredibly important because this is all the psychology of the film watcher's behavior, essentially. This is a quick extract from what's called the Big Five. It's a psychological profiling tool. It's very common. I think it's actually probably the root cause of everything that you're seeing that's trendy in personality tests nowadays, but the Big Five is the original measurement score, and it measures personality across 5 profiles. And if this analysis is done in the right kind of way, you can figure out kind of where your audience is sitting, perhaps on a voting spectrum, if it's a political dimension to your documentary, or where their loyalties and interests lie. If you have that overview right at the beginning, it can affect the way that you can write the script. It can affect your conversations that you have downstream from the film being released. It can affect the way that you negotiate around your film. You know, if you're entering into a conversation with someone like Netflix, who's probably unlikely to give you any numbers on the film, I would try and go in there armed with as much knowledge about the potential reach of your story as possible. And this is all, you know, relatively straightforward nowadays with the tools that are available. So there are paid tools and there are free tools, and I wouldn't shy away from it using any of the free tools either. In fact, here's one we built earlier. This is the audience research tool that's freely available on groovy.tv. This is Facebook's audience reach analysis tool that we've converted with a nice little front end that allows you to see the reach for your film in pretty much any given market. And it's very, very quick and easy to use. You pick your territory, you pick the key themes that you think are relevant to your film, maybe even the actors that you're using, you pick the age groups, and the tool then breaks down a demographic profile of who's talking about those items to do with your film in the territories, and that's then also broken down by age. And as you can see, women over the age of 51 love Tom Cruise. You also have Google Trends, which is another free tool. This is mapping all online conversations that are happening in terms of searches that are going into Google. And it's just a very, very quick and easy way to see on a country basis or even on a state basis or a province basis within a territory how many conversations are going on around specific themes. Again, if you're opening with a documentary, documentaries are very easy audiences to find versus fictional film themes. And they're very open to this form of analysis. And again, Google Trends is completely free, and within 5 minutes, you can get a general comparison between one theme, which is Black Widow, versus Fast and Furious. We have been talking about this idea of audience data and its importance on film marketing, and also being ready in terms of making sure that your pitches are better in terms of actually having data behind them in terms of who the audience is. There's a very important deadline, though, that's fast looming. I think it's now set for mid-2023. This thing called the cookieless world. Doesn't impact you straight away, but it will definitely impact the people that you're going to be working with. Today, if you go on a website, you drop what's called a cookie. It's a little bit of information about your browser. And that's then measured on the site in terms of what you interact with. And then the site can use that data from you, from your profile, to go out and basically, hit you with another shoe ad, or perhaps suggest something else that they have in their repository. As we're moving towards 2023, everything that we know in terms of online tracking is about to break. And so the VOD platforms that might be interested in taking your film are not going to be able to operate as efficiently as they did in the past. So again, having a very clear conversation with your potential buyer and explaining to them, in exquisite detail who the potential audience is and the testing that you've done behind this and the creatives that you've set up in order to make sure that when they market the film, they can do the best job around it, is going to be very, very important, because essentially all online tracking as we know it is about to change. There will be solutions for sure, but it's going to become much, much trickier. And because you guys make the content, if you bear this in mind, you will be greatly helping the people downstream to do a better job of making sure your film gets seen. So Groovy is a marketing tech agency. We specialize in audience development, audience research. We've also built an audience data platform for film, particularly independent film across Europe. And just to give you a quick idea of how effective audience data can be in the film marketing lifecycle, particularly when the film is released by distributors, we generally tend to see an improvement of 3 to 5x on the revenue when good audience data is included in the film campaign. My name is Ben, as I mentioned. We're running a weekly show on LinkedIn called That's Entertainment. We issue a regular weekly update, so if you want to stay in tune with everything that's going on within the crazy world of film and TV production, on top of the crazy world of distribution and exhibition, I suggest you tune in, link in with me, and we can keep you posted on all the changes as they happen. Thank you very much.
Appendices.
Yeah.
I hope we're not going to talk about medical matters today. Look, so it might seem a little bit of a rocket science, but let's talk about a couple of examples where those audiences are actually quite different. You were also working on the Oscar-winning film Parasite. What were like your key takeaways on doing, for example, the marketing campaigns for Parasite?
So we started working on Parasite in Singapore, and we ended up working on on the movie release in 7 other territories after that. And because we were running the film campaign, we were able to record those audiences using this tracking technology that I discussed right at the end. And with each country that we approached, we took the audience that we'd done in Singapore and we modeled it to the new territory that we were working on there. And then we worked on the film in that campaign, and then we were then releasing it in the next territory several weeks later. So we took that audience data and we modeled it into that market. And what we found was the click-through rate, one of the key tracking indicators that we saw for the film was improving with each country that we were going to. So that was one thing that was very interesting. So by the end of the campaign, I think we started maybe about 2% of the people that were seeing the campaign were clicking off to go off to the buying page that we'd built. By the end of the campaign, we were up towards 8-9%, which for an online campaign is very, very good. The other thing was we were able to advise each distributor that we worked with what were the key assets that worked the best. So, you know, when we moved from Singapore into the next territory, we already had discarded about half of the lobby stills that we were working with. We'd already edited down the videos that we'd been working on to be like the most engaging for the audiences that we'd seen that were buying in Singapore. And so consequently, the other thing that we were doing was we were drastically improving the campaign from a creative and targeting perspective, because each country was like an A/B test for us. So by the time we reached the last 3 or 4 territories, we were up to that really golden tier of, you know, 7 or 8% click-through rates from the ads that we were running.
If I remember also correctly, audiences perceived also the film very differently in different countries. So even the messaging around how the film was promoted was very different. If I remember correctly, in Singapore it was marketed as thriller, and in some other territories, actually, although the film was the same, talking about the film had to be completely different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so the copy was the only thing that we really adjusted around the creative. You know, it was, we had a limited pack. You know, we had maybe about 30 images that we could use. We had maybe 2 or 3 trailers. And those didn't change too much between the territories, because I guess it was quite difficult for them to go back to Korea and get new stuff. So we were generally working with the same materials, but the way that we were communicating in the posts and the advertising copy was adjusting in each territory that we were in.
Last question. You know, who is Groovy working for? We're talking about Parasite and very high-end and studios, so forth. What can Groovy do for an independent producer? You showed that you have a free tool on your website where you can at least do a quick run on who your audiences could be, but is Groovy accessible for the regular producers as well? I remember you partnered up with Film Funds and Creative Europe too.
Yeah, exactly. So, as mentioned, a 4-hour conversation with a marketing person will probably yield you most of the good information that you need to ensure that you're ready.
Including hiding your marketing budget.
Yeah, including hiding the marketing budget, which is very important. The other side is, if you want to do the deeper analysis, you know, there are tools out there. The beauty about the internet is a lot of these conversations are exposed. So Even if you're jumping into Reddit and looking at topics that are associated with your film, you'll be surprised at the amount of information that you can come away with. You don't necessarily need to come to us and spend 3,000 or 4,000 euros to get a very detailed audience analysis report, as I showed you here. There's plenty of stuff online that will give you all the good indicators for if you're on the right track with your ideas, if your budgets are really restricted. And the other thing is that we published a book on this back in 2017. It's free to download off our site. We've written it with production and distribution in mind. Chapter 2 is all about the marketing there to ensure that you guys have the right analysis in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to take a kind of a conclusion on this topic, again, now I'm speaking as a producer, and one of the things what I find so terrifying is that imagine, by average, we all spend 3 or 4 years working on a film, and working on any film is very difficult. I haven't been on a film production that has been easy. It's always been almost getting married and divorced and then getting married again and so forth and so forth. And for me, at the present moment, the most frightening thing is that if I have made me and my director and my cast and all my creative team, we've made all of those hardships, and we put it out, and it doesn't get to the audience, not because of me, but because of the system has changed, or we can't go back to theaters, then who can I blame? And I can spend time blaming my sales agent, I can blaming my distributor, I can blame my exhibitor, I can tell that the festival didn't do a good job, and so forth. And I realized that in many ways it's like putting the responsibility on somebody else. And if I can at least have 10% or 15% of influence of telling them that, have you thought about my audiences? Where is the right positioning? I have my 10 stills and 1 trailer without voiceover. I went to David's site and I looked at, there is a nice opportunity in Sweden because there is very lack of Swiss content in there. By the way, David, you should run a search now quickly to see what type of Swiss content is available. No, seriously. Then you have all of that information, and in a way then you can be a good parent and you can set the demands for everybody else, helping that money coming back to your production. And I think the idea here is not to make producers data scientists, but it's at least have producers the ability to ask a question, are you doing a right job? I give you another example, and Agustina, I've just heard that her plane that caught fire has landed in Geneva, and there is no fire trucks, which is amazing. So she will be here with us in 15 minutes, but she works in a company called Usher.you, and what they do is that they automatically gather data where your film is playing right now. When I ran a demo with her, look, I actually discovered that my film was playing in 5 territories that me nor my sales agent had absolutely no idea. So sometimes it's also very good to understand where your film is playing, because you can do a little bit policing, but you can then also say like, hey, I, for example, found out that my film is playing in Poland. So of course, then I have an opportunity to tell all my Polish friends to say, hey, look at my film in Poland and go tell your other friends, and there's a chance of me getting better audiences to my movie. Now we actually are going to do a little turn, and we're going to talk a little bit how to prepare yourself better for the streaming age. And for that, I have a great pleasure to introduce Mitch Mallon, who's joining us from the United States. Good morning, Mitch. I hope you have been listening to our conversation. You are someone who is very pragmatic and very producer-centric, talking about the opportunities which are not only residing with peak platforms, but also other platforms. And the OTT landscape with local places, libraries, and then et cetera, is actually a fascinating place where a lot of money is to be made, right? But at the same time, producers also should very clearly understand how should they be prepared for this change, and assets we talked about a little bit. And secondly, what platforms are okay and what platforms are not okay, especially if there's so many sprouting of them. And then this is exactly what you have been doing, both as an aggregator, right? Mitch is also aggregating content to big platforms, but also as a member of the OTTX. So I'll give it up to you here. And thanks for joining us virtually.
So can everyone see my presentation up on board? And the audience is nil. So I put this in because most of the filmmakers and producers that I deal with, they need what? In order to get live, people think that, well, I just have a film and I have a trailer and we're going to go live. No, that's not how it works. So let me start off by saying I've been in this business a very long time. I started in the digital side in 2004. I ran Image Entertainment's digital division for 10 years, started my own, founded a trade organization in the US back in 2007, in which we try to create standards and best practices in the space. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those today. So state of the OTT market. And I always love this because the original Over the Top was a Stallone classic film back from the late 80s, 90s, Over the Top. Sorry, there's little, there we are. So state of the OTT market today, basically confusion. Too many platforms, too many places to go. I want to watch something tonight. Where do I go to watch it? I've decided to watch a film. Now, where is the title? How much will it cost me? Why can't I find anything to watch? An example is I have a friend who was watching some of the Daniel Craig Bond films. He watched Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, wanted to find Skyfall, had no idea where to find that. That's part of the thing, is actually be able to source content properly for the consumer. Sorry, there's a little lag. So many different options, as most are starting to understand, on how to access content these days. You've got Xbox, you've got the Fire devices, Roku's, Blu-ray players, Apple devices. So, and a little bit of statistics are some of the device penetrations around the globe as they started in the States, but now they're moving towards Europe and Asia. Roku, the top device out there with about 55 million devices. They're saying that there'll be close to 80 million within the next few years. So Roku is now penetrating in a lot of the television manufacturer sets. They started that way. They have their device per se as well. And I know they've started to come into Europe on top of that. Next, you have the Amazon Fire devices. So they say they've had over 50 million active users worldwide. They've started creating Fire TVs as well, which interact with the whole Amazon backend. So Toshiba, Insignia, Samsung are some of those devices, plus their stick, and they're actually their Fire box. Android TV, which has been around for a while, is now getting more embedded in set manufacturers. There are 80 million monthly active users. Sharp, Hisense, Philips, and more. Streaming sticks, boxes, we started seeing this probably about 6-7 years ago at CES, and now because of the penetration of OTT channels, now they're here. And then, of course, there's Apple TV devices, which are out there, which was really the first, home device to come in besides Blu-ray players, and they have an estimated 40 million users. So the new players in the game, Vizio, which is now starting to come out, and they're part of their fast channel scenario. LGs, Samsungs all have their own separate apps, which again was created with Apple back in 2008. And then Europe, literally, I used to be able to track all of the platforms throughout Europe and North America and Asia. There's absolutely no way that you can track because they seem to be popping up daily here. But there's a strong presence within the European marketplace. We know that some of the platforms now are starting to get into the AVOD section, which is the sweet spot for everybody these days. But of course, the States have the Tubies and the Amazons, and IMDb now just launched. So their penetration is coming into Europe as well. So many more opportunities for producers and filmmakers. Some more of the local flavor. Back in the US, if people have been following for years, the app just started to explode. I think there were up to 5,000 apps around Roku at one time, 350 to 400 different content companies that were actually able to offer the big riddle with all this is, great, who do you play with? Who do you work with? And as Sten said, there are so many opportunities besides the traditional that you look at that there are more to begin with. Now, the new players in the game, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus, Peacock, Facebook Watch. So there are so many, and those are the higher end that are actually looking at. And the market has completely changed into getting what type of content will be available on those platforms as to, where does your film fit? So the ways to get content, I always like to go through. You have now actually 5 ways. You've got electronic sell-through, EST, where you can purchase and own. You've got internet video on demand, where you rent for probably 48 hours or up to 72 hours. And you have 30 days to begin that rent. SVOD, where you're paying a monthly subscription to access content. AVOD, which is really the sweet spot for everybody today, and everybody is launching, where literally you're watching, but there are ads placed in there, and there is a cost per ad that is generated back to the distributor, the aggregator, the filmmaker on that. And then the new flavor of the past 2 years are the fast channels. So basically linear digital. So you can have a James Bond channel, which I think Pluto had recently. You can have a classic television channel where all it does is stream those episodes. So that is the thing. LG is into that, Vizio's into that, IMDb, Tubi, they're all getting into those fast channel scenarios. There are companies specifically coming out and building fast channels. So all of that. Now, what do you need to do in order to get the film to marketplace? So the basics of basics that people seem to overlook is metadata. It seems so obvious and simple, but I can't tell you how many people are like, what? So we know the title. We need the copyright. There's an EIDR number, which is an industry-wide identifier within the marketplace. So EIDR, please go research this. Is there a theatrical release? Is it HD or SD? What's the genre? Who's the cast? The synopsis, 400 characters, that's the average. Is there a rating? And where the rating, based upon country? What's the running time? Language, what languages do you have? Do you have captions? Do you have subtitles as well? Who's the production company, director, writer, producer? Now also people are looking at more specifically, what's the IMDb rating? Is there a Rotten Tomatoes rating? It'll expand from there. And then tags. Tags is the way that people are going to find your title. You can put a title up, but if nobody knows what to source it through when they're online, the back-end providers, then how are you going to find anything? Then on top of that, we created back in the late 2000s, early 2010, 11, we came up with a standard Avails Template, which is the EMA Avails. So this is basically a format that we submit to platforms specifically so that they can ingest the content properly into their service so that you can make the right title, the right release date, it's the right format, right territory language. And so some of that information that we supply to them is, again, title, territory, the language for those territories, what's the release date, SD, HD, rights, who is the encoder? So who's actually delivering to that platform? There's a digital SKU. Is there identifiers so that actually be tracked when you're actually being paid out? What's the release year? There's long tail catalog where the titles may have been, put out in 97, 98, 2010. We need those original release years. Is there a rating, again, with territories, running time, caption, subtitles, all the basic things we need in order to get your title live on different platforms. So here's the riddle of the age. There are too many OTT platforms. How do you know which one to work with? Someone comes and gives you an offer. Okay, I got an offer for $20,000. Great. Okay, are they legitimate? Do they have DRM? Are they protecting your file so that nobody can grab it and actually put it out there? What companies are they working with? How long have they been in business? What's their outlook in the future? Will they be around in 2 years, 3 years? Will you get paid? I mean, I get hit with this every week where, Mitch, hey, we love your catalog. We'd love to work with you. Great, who are you? Oh, okay, well, let me see if I have any colleagues and friends that may be working with you. And it's almost like an investigative series that you have to go through to see some of these newer guys that are coming out, because everybody wants to be in the game because they think it's so easy, and it's not easy. It's a very hard place to be. So this one thing that I come across all the time with my filmmakers, they don't have the correct assets. It seems very simple, but they don't have it. Hey, Okay, so what are you going to deliver? I can't find the tape. Do you have a digital file format? Is there an MPEG? Is there an H.264? I don't have that. Okay, trailer. Is your trailer here? Great. Is it rated? Is it green band? Is it red band? What do we have? Do you have subtitles for all that? All the assets that we need. So again, before you sign with a sales agent, distributor, aggregator platform, make sure you have all your assets. Do you have your feature? In what format do you have it? Do you have your trailer? Do you have your captions done? Are there subtitles? Where are the subtitles? And most importantly, in the digital space that most people overlook is the artwork. And I'm saying this for a long time, and everybody, you have a millisecond to grab someone's attention. If that artwork does not portray somebody to stop and look at you and take a look at the trailer, it's over. They're not coming back. So artwork is one of those things when you're going into production or financing films, you need to put some monies towards the artwork creation. And you can have multiple artwork. You can do theatrical. You can have multiple artworks for the digital space. I change it. Some platforms prefer certain color bands. And so that's what we tweak towards. Biggest thing with everything, be realistic. It's the digital space. We're maturing. We're not a mature market yet. We're not. We've been around for 14 years, almost 15 years now. We're getting there, but we're not making up for all of that monies that have been dissipated because of COVID. We're a very strong market. Yes, we are, but we're still maturing. So have your expectations be realistic when you're working with providers. That's one of my advices to everybody. And then that's just a little quick overview of things that you need to know and be prepared for when you're going to market. When you have a finished film, you're ready to go out, just have that in the back of your mind of ready to go. I'm ready to go to market, and here's where we're going, and who you're going to. So my one's over. Thank you.
So I guess now we can have a quiz: SVOD, AVOD, FAST, EAT, and etc. Who remembers all of them? All right, interesting. Look, I wanted to touch upon actually 2 points what you made, which I think were very, very critical. So the first point was that the fact is that the market is not only about the big players, right? That yes. For producers, there is amazing monetization opportunities. And you only had 2 slides of that VOD landscape, but basically there are many, many places where you can monetize. And one of the things that you are very vocal on promoting is that only don't think about online space, but think about something that was called the auxiliaries, if I remember correctly, right? Including libraries and hospitals and then et cetera, et cetera. So do you want to a little bit kind of reflect on the potential of auxiliaries, and also actually if here are producers, and I'm sure who have produced films, the opportunities on the long tail?
No, I mean, literally the digital is the sum of the whole. I've said it forever. Yes, you can get a nice license fee from somebody, which is amazing. And if you do, God bless you, and take it and be proud of it. But what happens when that money has vanished? Where are you going after that? There's so many other opportunities out there. So how I look at things is we always want to go out electronic sell-through and rental. That's how I look at everything, because that is a marketing tool for everybody. Whether someone purchased something or not, they're still getting an impression. That impression is very valuable. So that you can work with all of those platforms, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google Play, whether it's Chile, whether it's FilmDo, whether it's Sky, all of those, you can go out there. But that's a first window. Second window is if you're getting a licensing fee. Third window, you have AVOD, and then you have these ancillary, like Sten said, where you have public libraries, colleges and universities. There are companies, Overdrive, Hoopla in the States, Midwest Tapes, Canopy, that actually a lot of my colleagues, filmmakers, myself, make steady, good money getting to different audiences out there, because you know what? Everybody has their own favorite of where they go to. You know what? Someone may look at Amazon for a title, but they go to Google Play. So it's good to be on those for the EST IVOD side. But when you're getting out, there are certain needs in the marketplace that these other companies provide. We also have opportunities, people looking at bus stops. We go into correctional facilities. There are opportunities there. It's literally just be open. It really is be open to what the opportunities are. There are the mainstay guys that are in the press all the time that you always hear about. That doesn't mean that's where all the money comes from. That's the gold. Yes, that's what you want, but it's all the sum of the whole. You know what? It's a long play. It's not, oh, you know what? I made a film for 1.5 million pounds and I'm going to make it back. Well, I got a license fee for 250,000 pounds. Great. Now what do I do? Well, you've got to go and connect all those dots everywhere else. I got 10,000 here. I got 5,000 here. I got 50,000 here. And eventually you start to add it all up so you can get it back. Or, you know, maybe you do get lucky to get a nice license fee from one of those platforms if they deem that title worthy enough. But some of these smaller OTT AVOD platforms that you need to do the research on are stepping up and actually looking for certain specific genres to fill their need for their consumers that they're going to. There's a company now that we're speaking with that wants to just focus on boxing films, you know, anything within that realm. And you know what? They're offering decent money and it's not taking away from anything else that we're doing in the marketplace. So that doesn't hurt you. It's be open to it. You know, hopefully you work with a sales agent, aggregator, distributor that is a partner of yours. That's the hardest part. Somebody that really is invested in you, not some is financially and emotionally to help you see your vision, but also be open to all the new markets. And there are always new things popping up. In 2005, when I was working with my former company, I found this company in Cleveland, Ohio. I found them via a press release. I was just scoping and found a press release. And I said, oh, look at this company. They look like they're signing audio. Maybe they'd be into video. And I called, found their head of legal, met their CEO. I was the first company to do a video deal with them. And we were in public libraries throughout the North America, Ireland, the UK, and Canada. And my company didn't care about it at all until the first revenue started coming in. They're like, wow, public libraries. Yes, it's a nice ancillary support to what you're doing. It's a compliment. And digital, there are many different pieces of compliments to your business. And you as a filmmaker need to know where. So one example I always say, if you're creating a film on nature, are there any organizations that are actually supporting what you're doing that you can get involved in? Because now with this marketplace of expansion OTT and AVOD, well, there may be an opportunity for you to support them as well on the back end when the film is done, if they have an initiative. There's so many different places to go. Just be open with it. So, that's always my advice. Just be open with it.
I can swear hand on the heart that something that Mitch says is true, because the last film I produced received quite a good market offer for English language territories and North America. It's a platform called Shudder, and I have to say that it's a platform focused on genre films, and the offer was it was very, very lucrative, and we didn't expect it to come, but it basically made almost, I would say, 1/3 of the box office what the film actually performed, and that basically came from a specialty distributor. Key question today, what we are being exploring here, like who should take the responsibility? Should the producer be more active? Should you go and whip or bore your sales agent, because sales agent also has so many other films to represent, and etc. Who should really take the lead in this conversation? Should the sales agent be bypassed altogether, and you start finding an aggregator such as you, or you know, what's the kind of the good playbook here?
You have some wonderful sales agents out there, but the producer should always be aware of what's going on in the marketplace and then come up. I mean, just as I said earlier, I used to be able to track pretty much every platform around the globe who was relevant. I can't do that anymore. I can't. I'd love to be able to, but there's not enough time in the day. So I look for my producing partners to see if they find something that's of interest, then I'm going to do the due diligence and see if it's worth our effort and time. But no, it should be that. There's just too much going on in this space, and you've got to drill down as to see, is that worth my time or is it not worth my time? I mean, we have a lot on our plate to just prep and put out every month. It's not an easy task just to get everything together through an encoding house, which you've got to find the right encoding house to deliver all those specs. So you've got new releases that come out weekly, and on top of that, you have orders for these AVOD platforms that go out by the hundreds. So just organizing that, trying to keep on top of that, and then also trying to see what new opportunities are coming out there. It's great. There's no negative. This is all positive. Sten knows with me, it's all positive. There's no negative here. But, you know, you need people to help you as well. And you know what? When you sign with somebody, they're a partner. And if you don't feel like they're a partner, then you shouldn't be signing with them. It's very simple.
But you were also talking about TRMs and other important points. And we really see that during the COVID time, Piracy is also moving from the, let's say, the Hollywood blockbuster level into eating indie films as well, right? Because there are some hot titles people want to see by not paying for them. What's your sort of like a 5 to 10 point rule book on understanding whether a certain platform is legit or not?
I love to look and see, is a major working with them? If a major's working with them, then they've done their due diligence. And it doesn't have to be all the majors. If one of the majors is working with a so-called platform, then they've gone through that diligence. I look at on the piracy side, I always look at YouTube. You know, check YouTube out and make sure you're protected there. Always. You know, things come up, they have different algorithms. Everyone should be checking that, and it's not a big deal to have it pulled down. That's fine. Then it's also, do you know any colleagues or friends that are working with platforms? How has their experience been? It's really, we're a community, and we're not a big community. People forget that. I've known Sten now for, 7, 8 years. It's a community of people that we know and meet. And within my world, it's a community of people that I know. You have friends that you can call. What do you think about this company? Oh, I haven't heard about them. Oh, well, these people work with it. Tell me, give me your experience. That's part of the job, to keep everyone honest, because a lot of these companies are going to go away. We haven't had that implosion of who's here and who's not here, but it's going to come. It's expanding too quickly, and there's going to be a reduction of how many platforms are out there. It can't be sustained. But until then, you've just got to be smart and wise and see if these are actually viable places to bring your content, or your sales agent or distributor to bring it. It's a team and a partnership.
So let's also talk about, lastly, about the negative scenario. I know that you're all the positives guy, but recently I've had a case with a friend of mine who's a distributor, and the film was licensed from that company to a sub-licenser, and then it was stolen off from a VOD platform and actually pirated before the premiere in its home territory. If things go bad, what producers should do, because things can go bad very quickly. What's the sort of standard practice of approaching this?
It's like, if you remember, this was happening with Fox a couple of times where they had some titles coming out and they got made it to market early. And it's like, it's a problem. It's a big problem. Legally, do you get in? Do you get the authorities involved? We're still trying to, how do you react to this? It's terrible that this happens. And if it goes to market like that, is one of the reactions, great, I got to get it out immediately because it's out there and I got to take advantage of it? You know, we don't know. It does happen, and that's the problem with the internet, for one. Things are too easily accessible. I look at, you know what, who are the obvious ones where content can be possibly pirated, and not so much pirated, but someone putting it up, you know, and you scour those and make sure you protect it. But can you protect every platform? I mean, how are you going to do that? And there are organizations that specifically do this and track it all the time, and it's a struggle. It's a risk. You know, there is the good and there is the bad, and, you know, you have to protect yourself as much as possible as to what happened. How did this leak get out there? Or how are you attacking that now? Will it happen again? You know, it's that things happen. So it happened once, yes. How do we make sure it doesn't happen a second time there? But, you know.
Everybody know who is a takedown agent? Okay, so takedown agent, yeah. Takedown agents are companies who basically deal with anti-piracy measures. So there's a few around Europe, so they are not cheap, but considering of what could happen to your film, I could say they start from ballpark of 1,000 euros. So if your film gets pirated, then you can contact this company. They have very good networks. They can, you know, send out legal notices automatically to the platforms where your film is pirated, and they make sure that your film is taken off those pirated platforms. It usually takes about, I think, around a week where they can do the first sweep, but there is a possibility to very swiftly eliminate the possibility of the film spreading more. And as I said, in this recent particular case, we had to recommend a takedown agent and spending 1,000 euros and making sure that the film is grabbed off from everything. It was a cost very well spent, rather than maybe it was 200 tickets or 150 tickets, right? Which was the cost of doing that. But of course, that's a last resort. And of course, if you don't have a lawyer yet, it's also very good to have a lawyer to basically have your production and distribution contracts to also include piracy clauses. that what would happen if the film is pirated, and who will take responsibility, and who will take the lead also in case of the digital. And it's something that we know it's going to happen, but we all want it not happening. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us this early morning. I hope we'll see you next year here in Geneva. Meanwhile, we're going to go do our check sheet test with EAD, SVOD, AVOD, TVOD, and then what was the last one? Fast?
And fast.
Yes, fast I have to remember, that's new. So super
That's
thanks, and see you soon. Thank you.
Be well. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we've been going almost 2 hours straight. I have an idea. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back for something which is called Ask Me Anything. So we have everybody here who have spoken, Birgit, David, Ben, and Augustina. I heard she's basically driving towards us. So the idea is really to have a very good discussion on asking any types of questions, disagreements, agreements, and so forth. One of my good professors in Tokyo said, attack me. It means that if you have a good point to say it out, and let's have a good discussion, because collectively we learn. So we'll continue in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much. We have exactly 1 hour to go. Been a very fast day, I think. Learned a lot of things. And we have one presentation, which we had to reschedule, an Ask Me Anything session, and then finally Sander Saar, who was the head of Nonlinear and Disney, will a little bit talk about what are the new and big horizons. But I hope you also got caffeinated and are excited. Let's give a big applause to a presenter that survived today a burning plane, just to come here to give a presentation for you. So Agustina Lumi from Marché.
Hi, how are you? Thanks. I'm going that way, right?
Yes.
So, thank you. Stan.
Well, first of all, amazing. Thank you very much. I think even I would be in a situation that if my airplane starts burning, then I probably gone home and said, see you next year.
I must confess that I changed my shoes outside in the street, so this was like I was running for you guys, so please be patient with me because my head is like this. No, the plane was had to go back to Spain because something was burning inside. We don't know what, because they didn't tell us, so now I'm here burning inside to tell you more about these, usher you these things that we do for distributors, filmmakers, stakeholders, audiovisual players.
Duck and cover.
See.
But you see, but hey, that's the dedication to cinema. So as a context, we have discussed quite a lot of things around data, and one of the examples I kind of provided out was that filmmakers quite often not even know where their film is playing. And thanks to you and your team, I had a few weeks ago a situation where I found out that, oh wow, our film is playing in those types of places. And not only I found out, but the Estonian Film Institute also found out very fast and very easily where their films were playing.
Yes, actually what we try to do at Usher You is try to connect films and content with audiences, and this is all done around data and using data. And this is like the big thing, as you say, because we have a strong belief, not just about data in general, but that audiences are the main asset that we need to have in mind and to build and to bond with them in order to have a sustainable future for the content we create. I'm also, as a background, I'm not only the...
You're not a data scientist.
No, actually, that's why...
You're not a marketing person either.
No, that's why...
So who are you?
Bueno, I'm originally a producer. I come from Argentina, actually, which is a place really, really far from this land. And I live in Spain, but I mostly worked in production, so creating content. And then I was joining the national film body in Argentina, and I spent almost 10 years working in how to promote Argentine content around the world. So I was basically managing a team that built a VOD and a TV network just to bond with audiences and try to have this idea that we need to track where audiences are going around our content, to remarket and to go with the flow and tell them that there's something good that we are producing that maybe they don't know where to find or how to discover. So we built strategies around maybe showing things that they already knew and then offering something extra, which was more independent or art house, and we started creating that. And then I joined I think like more than a year ago, I joined this Irish team, Usher U, and I was fascinated because they were having the data that I wanted to have around where content is being distributed around the world. So again, using data to go and track where audiences are demanding what we are producing. And sometimes we only produce and we don't know that audiences are demanding it. So
often, isn't that a very big paradox that our national film institutions give us money for production and then it goes out and then?
Yes, that's the main challenge. You know that in Argentina we produce and premiere more than 150 films a year, which is a lot for South American and Latin American low-budget country. It's not actually, because it's a lot of films that are aired and premiered. And the thing is that audiences want to find them, but they don't know where to. So again, this paradox around state governments putting money into films, into production, and then not being able to find the niche, or how we call it in VOD, the community of interest around those content. And it's not just about film, it's any content that we produce. So again, I'm obsessed about audience development mainly. So I kind of found this team in Ireland that they were also obsessed. And mixing this kind of tech and the passion about films and audiences. So that was kind of the deal.
Let us know and show us what Usher U does.
A ver.
Please.
Sí. A ver. So I'm there. So that's what I was saying. This is me. The picture is quite weird, but that's me. So what I was saying is maybe I'm more identified with some of you guys because I used to produce for TV and for cinema a lot. And then I worked in this project, which I advise you to check and go online, which is called Cinear, which is this network around Argentine content, which is actually free, and you can watch movies wherever and whenever you want. So again, I also work for VOD, so I'm kind of a double or triple agent. I work for TV, for cinemas, then I work for tech, and also I work for VOD, mostly thinking of how B2B can be exploited around VOD in Europe, which is why I work for Eurovod, which is the VOD association in Europe. You know, I live in Spain, that's why my plane got delayed. So, and this is Usher U. This is a quite interesting mix between film and tech, these people that we come from the film industry, and some interesting developers that are thinking of how to connect and deliver solutions, software solutions, to help different players. You see the logos here. It's not just to showcase how good we are, but it's just to showcase the variety of players that are choosing data as a part of their strategy. Of course, big studios do that, but also distributors that are not so big, maybe middle-sized, or even production companies that have a catalog and they want to showcase where this catalog is being distributed around the world. So mainly, Usher U also, of course, builds software solutions and platforms, but mainly we have a big database of almost 300K films around the world, and we provide showtimes and streaming data around those films. So you can plug those those data feeds either to your website, or we can build your website and you can bring audiences with your campaigns. Maybe you work on social media, maybe you do marketing, maybe you use word of mouth, maybe you want to promote your website or whatever that is, and you can have the information about where your films are playing around the world. That's why we also work with, as you may see, Austrian films, and I don't see the German films there, the German films logos. We work with promotional agencies and national film bodies to help them track what audiences are demanding, or help these audiences maybe click twice and buy a ticket of a German movie around their neighborhood in the cinema, which is the nearest to their house. So this is what we believe in. I know you have been talking about this while I was struggling to get here, but we believe that, of course, every player, no matter the size or the position in the value chain, we need to have and to own a data and digital strategy. Why? I think you have some answers to these questions from the presentations before, but we'll see at the end. I think that Ben has been talking about cookie apocalypse, how we call it, that third-party data and cookies phasing out, and how we are facing as well some challenges around how to promote our content, and marketeers and data scientists, as you say, Sten, they're like struggling on what are the tools that we are going to use around promotion if we don't have cookies, and if we cannot track the audiences or the users as we used to, or we are now doing that. We also have a context around, before we get to the conclusion, on why do we need to think about data-led decision-making. We have this context that is showing that users, we are users as well, audiences, we want to control the data we provide to these big places like, I won't say, but Google, whatever place that YouTube, which is the same as well, but these browsers or these places that we navigate in, we want to know what data are we giving them, and we want to protect with the GDPR and every privacy movement around the world. They are trying to do that, so the context is changing again. And of course, I'm not going to talk about this, which is obvious that windows are kind of changing and have changed, and while COVID has left, and some big studios, like one of our logos there, have decided to go direct to consumer because they think that audiences are there and we need to get to them as quick as we can, as easily as we can. So I think that mostly my presentation is going to be about sharing a mindset of moving from something that maybe is stuck in only the content we create, but how we reach audiences with something that is not for experts. Data is not for experts. Of course, experts use data, but we are not experts, and we can use and read data and make it worth for our content to get to these audiences that we want to get. Again, as I'm a producer and I come from TV, I have this mindset about audiences being important, but sometimes when we are creating a content, we are always and only thinking about what we are telling as a story. And this is an anecdote, a stupid one, but I work for a big Chilean festival in Santiago, in South America, and I work for a series lab. I'm a mentor of the series lab. They are making series content, and I have to do a specific workshop around them understanding that they have to improve their content in order for audiences to be identified with that and not being just lost in translation or losing them in the second chapter. So again, what we work is to move from smart to smarter, to start thinking about how we cross this path and we start building something sustainable. Our content can be great, but if audiences are not there to consume that, we're lost. We don't have anything. We won't even get to have a second content, maybe, if that content is our first one. For some of you, maybe what I'm saying may sound obvious, but it's good as a reminder, because we are always with a lot of things in our heads. And again, as creators, we are thinking about the character, the storytelling, what we should get for financing, and we are not thinking about how to get audiences from interest in our content to a sustainable relationship with what we do as companies, also as individual creators. So what we do in Azure U is we try to bridge this gap between someone or some group that is interested in a piece of content or in a kind of storytelling or in a theme, whatever, to build a relationship with that. And of course, to get these people to do a transaction, which is, of course, go to the movies and see our movie, or click for the VOD offer. That's why we provide this data around content globally. And again, this can sound obvious, but I used to work with teenagers in Argentina and working for cinema as well. And it's good that we are always reminded of these best practices, or what are the opportunities that we get if we become more data-led. It's not becoming experts, but it's, again, knowing that we need to use these tools, and these tools are really nearer than what we think to us. They are there to use different widgets, stupid things that we can maybe add to our website or to the things that we are already doing. So again, it's about monitoring what is happening with audiences, trends, patterns, using real-time insights. We do that at Azure U. We provide these real-time insights. We are not the only company, I should say, doing this. But again, it's interesting for you to know that there are companies that only provide data, and there are companies that care about bridging this gap between films and audiences. That's what I wanted to say. So then if you're running campaigns, becoming more data-led and reading data and including data in these campaigns that you run, email marketing or social media, whatever, can help you build more marketing efficiency. So you can do more with less and automatize a lot of workflows that now are giving you headaches. For instance, reporting. For instance, remarketing. For instance, email flows or threads that maybe you cannot manage because you have a small team, or you don't have people that are, as you may think, are experts in marketing or promotion or smarter promotion. Again, I know that you do smart things. That's why the mindset is to become smarter. It's not that I'm telling you what to do, because if I had the answer to all these big questions, I wouldn't be here. I would be in an island and not getting planes that are delayed. So I would be drinking a martini or something like that. So again, what we're obsessed about is using data to position catalogs, to help in content discovery. Because again, it's great that your creation is in a big platform, but if people cannot find that content in Netflix, Amazon, or wherever platform you want to name, it's useless, because you are part of a big catalog and audiences are not getting there. And what we need, again, is to build a relationship which is sustainable, because if not, we are there just for one title, one thing, one shot, and what else for our career? So using data allows you that, to guide global audiences to choice, which is what big studios are using or doing as a result of going direct to consumer, as I said in one of my first slides. And then we're really encouraging our partners to build fan bases, because we know that social media is a big, big thing to promote and to connect with audiences, if this is what we are talking about today. And we don't advise that. Of course, we advise you, and we do that. We use social media to connect with audiences, but it's not something to rely on, because the audience that is in social media is not ours. If the platform is shut down, Facebook, Twitter, our account, you lose all the things that you have been working on for the past, I don't know, X years or X months. So again, what we are encouraging our partners and the logos that you saw there is to build tools inside their websites to amass first-party data. I don't know if, Ben, you talked about first-party data? A little bit, okay. Because we share this mindset as well, and it's good to be connected around that. What we encourage you as well is to start, amassing first-party data, which is kind of simple to do. It's not being, again, a specialist. It's trying to have exchanges of value with audiences or with the community of interest you want to address with your content, and maybe have competitions, which is a tool that we have, or maybe share something content-wise. Of course, content that audiences are seeing as value is, of course, having them or giving them permission to freely give you information about them, an email address, which is, of course, something that is stupid and sounds basic, but with an email address, you can do a lot around guiding audiences to choose your content or your catalog if you're a distributor. And then, of course, as I said, we work on this data capture in websites, and we are building this mindset with our partners to own audiences. Of course, there's a lot of things to tell you about the tools that we develop or the tools that you can develop yourselves. But again, thinking first-party data, thinking about guiding global audiences to choice is the right mindset. So what we do is we work on the full life cycle of a film. For instance, in these platforms, if you go to German films, Austrian films, or any of the logos that I shared, you will see that we have different tools to amass first-party data and to maybe allow audiences to click on a button that says, demand a film if this film is not showing in your territory. And we get the possibility of building fan bases. And for our partners, German films, Austrian films, the partner that you imagine from these logos that I showed you, they can start knowing what's happening in these territories that their films are not showing. We believe, again, in building these long-term relationships with audiences and in doing more with less, using data and becoming more data-led. This is something that I already said. Using data helps you both position B2B and B2C. Position B2C with these audiences that you can guide to choice, and also position in the ecosystem, which is an ecosystem that is now a big ocean of offers, and we are not maybe being able to position what we have and what we are showing. Then if you're running advertising for any of your future releases or past releases, if you use data, you can identify these black holes where you're not doing well and getting real-time insights and start building better and better campaigns and new efficiencies, maybe. And then what's happening around audiences helps you, of course, guide traffic, know where traffic is coming from. Of course, that's basic, but also working more on your reputation and on SEO, and again, positioning yourselves and your content. And I know I'm maybe being repetitive, but I think that the mindset is, again, think about audiences. Data from audiences is not only providing you insights about choice, but also can bring you insights about new business opportunities that you are maybe not seeing, territories that are demanding your content, or partners that want to promote your content because they think that they work, for instance, public institutions that can work with you to promote your content outside your country. I mean, there are lots of opportunities, and the fourth one is really interesting, because if you start amassing first-party data from audiences that demand your content in territories that is not showing at, you can build demand early demand for future releases. So this is one of, I think, my last slides. Don't worry, Stan, because he was showing me the watch. This is interesting. We showed this slide in Marché du Film de Cannes when we were doing a panel with German films. And this is interesting because it's the way we show national film bodies that they can feed from B2C data and start reporting strategically and showing insights for the business to build intelligent decisions around the business that we do, which is showing audiences and trying to bridge the gap between films and content. So this is the most interesting, and actually it's a slide that we use for most of our presentations, because I think that if we start thinking about amassing first-party data and knowing what's happening around the audiences, we can feed the industry with what I said, where are these black holes where our films are not showing, either national catalogs or private catalogs from you as distributors or producers. And you can forget about this headache of knowing where to look for the information, where to search what's happening in the industry, because you get the information right from your website if you start building and adding these tools. So to finish, what I think is the most important thing about data is that it allows us to think long-term and to start building these sustainable relationships around the content that we create. Again, it's important to think first-party data, how we can build something that is a value that makes people exchange their personal information, of course, because they want something from us, their email address, their phone number, their whatever thing, because we provide something of value. To start thinking direct to consumer, how we can bridge this gap between interest and relationship, and again, building relationships around our content. It's not just about how to get the money or what to tell as a story, but how to make these films and content and audiovisual available for the rest of us. And these are my two last thoughts, which is, again, why I'm sharing a mindset and I'm not showing the softwares that we developed, that if you go with your gut, it's fine, but with data is better. And of course, if you don't measure what you do, you're not managing anything. And you're not making smarter decisions. So thank you for listening. I think, again, this is sharing a mindset. We have a lot of tech issues if you want to discuss and to show you how this works, which, again, I tell you, is not for experts. It's for us to exploit what we create and how we can get these audiences to love what we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. She will be also here to actually show you some of those producer tools later.
See?
Otherwise, they think that I'm lying about...
No, of course.
See? She promised.
See. Of course, and we have a lot of course, I can name drop some of the websites, or you can check the websites, but if you want to meet, I can show you how it works. Even I can show you the back-end solution, which is the kind and the quality of data you get around any content. As Stan said, we have really easy reports to pull around countries, name of films, and real-time data.
And actually, if you're going into new productions, then also how you can very simply create homepages for films and grab your audiences.
Yes, we also create custom pages and, of course, branded pages for special films that any of you want to promote, and that's maybe attached to direct ticketing or to an analytics solution or to a home for film, which is showcasing your catalog. I mean, again, I didn't want this to be a talk about product, because I think we have to share first that we need to think more about how to address audiences. And I know the guys, of course, did that before. Yes. But as I'm obsessed about that, and I think that sometimes when we talk about tech, we start getting people to say, oh, again, about tech, how can I do this? And again, it's sharing a point of view, and then the tools are there to integrate. They're easy and they're not expensive. That's another thing that maybe people think that they're
Easy,
expensive.
not expensive, second promise.
No, it's true.
All right, thank you so much.
Bueno, gracias. Thanks a lot.
We can get into from guts to data and easy and not expensive inter-AMA session. We have the last presentation now, and I'd like to introduce a great friend and someone who always sets my bar higher. I am about 42 years old right now, and I feel that I'm already missing the train occasionally. I also have a 12-year-old son, and I'm always thinking when I make decisions about how should I position my productions, or I put content out, I make my decisions on two test audiences. One is my mother, who is a 65-year-old psychoanalyst and the perfect audience for an art house film. Like if you talk about Ingmar Bergman, then she just goes crazy in a good way. So if I want to do a classic release to a classic audiences, it's my mother. If I want to get out something to a young audiences, that's my son. And something that we also with the speakers had been discussing this morning over the lunch was that imagine that the teenagers of today, they will be voting in about 2 or 3 years. And of course, we all want our teenagers to not only watch films from some big studios, but we also want them to watch films of our local origins. We want them to watch local productions, and we want them to be the good audiences. And one way of approaching this is thinking about audience development. And you can very much quote me on this. I think audience development is a very tacky word, because it presumes that there are some undeveloped barbarians outside of the Rome who needs development. But I think that those 16-year-old Gen Z, as said, they are empathetic, they are smart, they have access to information, but there is one very, very big difference. They are somewhere else, quite often, than rather in cinema. It doesn't mean that they don't like films or they don't like great content, but they are not in cinema. And Sandra's work in many, many ways deals around those new places, those new environments, and actually those new creators that are bringing in multi-billion dollars of franchises and building an amazing audiences. And the way to approach it is either ignore platforms or be eaten by the platforms, have some type of a strategy or approach to that, or build something yourself. And this is exactly what Sandra will talk about. Thanks for joining us very, very early morning from Los Angeles.
Thank you, Sten, for the intro. Absolutely great to be here. So as Sten said, I'm really excited about platforms and the independent creators renaissance that's happening at the moment. But really, what has enabled it? Like, what caused the change around us? There's 3 areas that are important to look at here. One thing is that we now have a complete freedom to create. We're not limited by the canvas of the cinemas or the theaters to have a certain length of a movie or TV that has to be the half-hour, 20-minute shows. Now we can do anything in any platform, in any length or in any format. It doesn't even have to be a 2D content, can be 3D worlds, etc. The second thing that has changed is that the distribution is now completely democratized. We're moving from a way where you could only show 20 movies in a theater, or let's say 110 channels on a TV, that was a less scarce world, to now a completely abundant world where now there's more than 10,000 hours of content uploaded every minute to those platforms. So everybody and anybody can share their content. It's completely democratized. And also the consumption has moved from being controlled, by the director of the theater or the cinema to decide what's going to show on the screens, or somebody in front of a TV network who's going to say that's what's going to play in our schedule, to now everybody's feed is generated algorithmically. It's personalized, meaning that every creator who uploads something has a chance to be seen by the audience. So those 3 things, having a complete creative freedom, having a distribution that's democratized and accessible to everybody, and the consumption being algorithmic, meaning that everybody has a chance to be discovered and develop an audience. But that has also caused so many new entrants coming to the space who are fighting for your time and fighting for your eyeballs. You'll see the traditional players trying to launch their own streaming services and go direct with consumers. We heard about that, like first-party data and building direct relationships. We have the new players who are completely changing the game and not focusing on making money with content at all, who are also going into the content space and streaming space. And then we have the third area, which I'm most excited about, which are the independent creators who are leveraging large platforms to build their audiences. And if you put them into perspective, then just see all of the red ones are that the platforms that get most of the attention, like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Hulu and others. But very little gets talked about where the audiences actually are spending time today, like more than 2.1 billion people who are visiting YouTube every single month. Or think about even like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, who are amassing massive audiences around the world. And that has caused the creator renaissance. Now, with those three things coming together that are enabling this revolution, where in the early 2000s, where the big platforms came out, they were there just to build an audience. You know, everybody went out and just, you're creating content to bring people to follow you and convince them to trust you. The second layer, which happened in 2010s, is they started monetizing and slowly building businesses around them through sponsorship. So they became like posters for the brands to get their message across. And now they're truly building entertainment franchises. And what do I mean by entertainment franchise? Let's take someone like Mr. Beast, who's built an audience of more than 110 million subscribers on YouTube, doing close to 1 billion views every month. And he's not just stopped there. He's now built a whole commerce business with Mr. Beast Burger, where he launched more than 900 restaurants in 1 year in the US, but also now in Canada and the UK. And has sold more than 1 million burgers within the less than 2 months. And it's just using his brand, his audience, his connection to leverage outside of his original content as well. He's doing apps and games, obviously he's doing sponsorships, investing in other businesses, and he's also doing a lot of philanthropy work now with Team Trees 2 years ago and Team Seas this year, if you want to check that out. Another example from TikTok is Charli D'Amelio. She's got more than 120 million followers on TikTok, and she's built similarly franchise around her. She's licensed her brand to build commerce with Hollister, launch her own social tourist brand, or Morphe, launch her makeup brand. She's got original shows now on Hulu and Snapchat just because she's able to capture audience attentions and focus on her audience when she's building her channels. And a third example, which is closer to home, is a UK-based company called Moonbug, who's now $265 million fund, who's acquired some of the largest kids IP like Blippi and Cocomelon and Little Baby Bum. If you have kids, I'm sure you've heard about some of them, and grown them into more than 7 billion views a month entertainment conglomerate, really, on the digital platforms. And of course, that content does not just sit on YouTube with 300 million subscribers and 7 billion views every month. It also extends to Netflix and Prime Video and Apple TV and all the other platforms, as well as doing original shows with HBO Max and Sky Kids, but also being one of the largest kids music label now on Spotify, with not to even talk about all of the toy licensing and apps and games that are built around it. And of course, creators it's growing super fast. Like, think about Netflix and YouTube are making both $7 billion every month of revenue. While YouTube is growing 83% year over year, Netflix is growing 19% year over year. So you have to decide where you plant your eggs, or like what do you expect to grow as fast as you could possibly grow your audience. And there's now around 2 million creators who are making living on those platforms. And YouTube has paid out a lot of money over the last 3 years to those creators as well. So the question, as Sten started with, is really like, do we want to focus on a defensive strategy and say all of those platforms and the creators, let them be. I don't care about them. I'm just going to focus on trying to retain the old way, the old paradigm in this new world. Or you could say, hey, I want to go and leverage those platforms. I want to use them for my own benefit in order to build an audience and potentially turn that into an entertainment franchise in the future as well. Or you decide, ignore all of that, the platforms, and I'm going to go out and build completely my own destiny, meaning you build your own platform that you can continue potentially to reinvent yourself and build in the new world. So this is my short intro to how I see the world and what do I believe is changing today and how it's impacting the world.
Thank you, Sander. I just got really lost in the numbers game again. But I know that my 12-year-old son wants to wants to watch some great movies with me, but then he also has his friends on TikTok and YouTube and etc. Why this? You mentioned this really interesting paradox here that we somehow kind of try to polarize and say that all of those big, let's not even say streaming platforms, but let's say creator platforms, and there is the ones that you mentioned, that somehow they are kind of polarized for cinema, that it's either cinema or it's, for example, that platform. Are we seeing actually there's some type of a complementarity rather than an opposition?
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen not just movies, but also TV and streaming platforms who are now leveraging the creators who built massive audiences on those big platforms. So what everybody really cares about as a storytelling, of course, we care a lot about the story and the message that we get across on the canvas that we choose. But it doesn't really matter if no one's going to see it. So audiences are really key. And that's why now there's more and more people opening up their minds and also their businesses to creators, because they can actually be the ones who can bring the audience to the cinemas. They can bring the audience to wherever it's playing, because they're really transferable. They're not locked onto those platforms. There's several examples of creators who, closed down their channels on one platform, moved to another platform, or like on the same platform, like launched new channels. And you can see the audience traveling with them because the affinity with them and their stories is what keeps them coming back. And the same thing applies if you think about any other canvas, like TV, who's now buying original shows, but also using them as talent on their shows in order to bring that audience, because that's what they're missing out if they kind of ignore that part of the world. Because if you put that into perspective, as we saw with all the other platforms that are out there, then they've already eclipsed, and they're growing even faster than anything else while they've eclipsed them.
So if I can make here a little remark, in Estonia we have quite a well-known cinema distribution company called Apollo. They are quite a big player, running both cinemas, VOD platforms, and TV. And in this year they put out a new job posting. Guess for whom the job posting was for? The job posting was somebody titled company YouTuber. And from a kind of a classical producer perspective, this might have seen quite a strange move. But what they basically realized was that since a lot of people were making their decisions on basically looking if the trailer is on YouTube, or somebody has a recommendation, or honest walkthrough, or your indie film explained in 10 minutes, that actually was a major marketing effort for their audiences. So a very classical distribution company put out an ad to basically to hire an online creator. By the way, they haven't still got one, but they are even ready to pay for that person's education. So we see that the need is there. But I want to actually, if you allow me, I want to come a little bit to the case of Moonbug, and to explain that we are not talking here about the issues around quality, but more of an understanding how do you produce around it. And Moonbug is a company that operates in an animation sector. Any animation producers here today? Sadly not, but we can all understand that producing animation probably is costly, consuming, and maybe perhaps not so much revenue. But Moonbug, in a way, just has proved a totally different type of a concept, where they produce high-quality animation, but not only animation, but also franchises for kids, also in localized languages. And opportunities, as we all know, Masha the Bear, for example, have shown that type of global phenomenon can come from anywhere. So can you a little bit talk about the philosophy and how Moonbug has kind of revolutionized or reimagined what an animation studio or an animation fund can be?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a fundamental belief that kids' attention is now predominantly spent on digital platforms. And that's really the thesis that's behind Moonbug. And with that, there's now original creators who've started developing their own characters and their own stories and their own animation on YouTube. And they've built up an audience. Most of them are in hundreds of millions of views a month on their own. And then when Moonbug enters in, then Moonbug will reinvest to make that content even better. So sometimes take a 2D animation and make it 3D or up the quality and make it available in many more languages. Rather than just being available in English or Spanish, make it available in 12 different languages and take that not just to YouTube, but also take that to other platforms. So if you think about your investment that goes into just doing one thing on one platform in one language, now you can utilize that in multiple languages on multiple platforms. And that's really the key part of it. So for example, some of the shows like Cocomelon has not just been the biggest show on YouTube for kids, but it's also the biggest, longest standing top 10 show on Netflix. So even none of the Netflix own productions have reached that clout in their own platform, being able to stay there for such a long time. So those audiences really are transferable across platforms. And Moonbug believes that making them available as widely as possible in order to build as big of an audience as possible will then result into everybody else starting to get interested in it, whether it's the toy manufacturers or it is other licensing partners. Then that helps to build the franchise around them in a very similar way as you think in the kind of Disney world, where you would build those characters and stories in the cinemas and build that audience and affinity on TV as well. And then you turn them into franchises as well, where you distribute that across the world through the existing kind of legacy distribution methods, which is now less relevant because most of it goes straight into streaming, but used to be as relevant. But that was the way to build an audience. And then once you have that audience and that affinity with the characters and the titles, then you license that out to your partners and build a franchise around them. But the core difference there is really the focus on where do you build the audience and where the audience is hard today, and being brave enough to go where they are and doing the best possible job to reach as wide an audience on these platforms as possible.
So, look, I'm going to ask a very honest question from you, and if you don't want to answer this, then please don't. So, is there any hope for old people like us today here in the cinema? In a way that is this a rocket science, or is this really relevant? Let's say for a an independent producer having produced 1 or 2 or 3 films and so forth. What's the kind of connection point between that independent producer and that world that is kind of in our pocket or in this device or everywhere else, and apparently a lot of people spend a lot of time in there. Is there a benefit,
Absolutely.
or is there a way for an independent producer?
If you're saying is there hope, I think it's never ever, literally never ever been a better time to be an independent producer. Never ever in history. Because you've never been able to be available on those platforms. Like anybody can go and upload and build an audience. And anybody has a chance to get discovered on those platforms by the algorithms. And when people are saying, oh, like the algorithms is not favoring my content, it's most of the time content's just not good enough. People don't care. And that's what the beautiful thing of these platforms is the instant feedback loop that you get from those platforms from the audience. So as an independent producer, if you're not embracing it, you're not really going deep in understanding the audience, meaning how to tell the story that they care about in a best possible way. This is really what the platform enables. And on top of that, that becomes your marketing channel, potentially a monetization, one way to monetize your content, and build that into something bigger that is just a one-off release. So I think it's just, oftentimes, as you said, like there's a stigma attached to the platforms where it's like you're an independent creator on YouTube, and therefore you're kind of a subpar creator compared to somebody who's producing independent film. But that time is way gone. Like if you look at the content out there on YouTube today, like some of it even excels in production quality and production value that you will see in theaters today. So it's a long time gone that we have just kids making movies in their kind of bedrooms type of thinking.
Cat pictures.
And cat pictures, of course, yeah. Cats on skateboards. I think that world there's still space for that because, again, the audience that goes to those platforms is large and we all have varied interests. But it's never been a better time to be an independent producer and embrace those platforms for building the audience, getting audience feedback, and then building your business on it as well.
Great. How many of you have their own production company page on YouTube? Just as a question. Okay, Sander, we need to fly you to Geneva very quickly for our strategy session. No, seriously. If Anais gives me promise that if Sander can fly next year, then we have to do a workshop for producers. She gave a promise. Great. So no, but seriously, I think that's a very fascinating topic. Look, we have about 5 minutes time, and I think we had a slight of a misalignment or a fight a few days ago. Yes, we too also disagree occasionally. But it was really about the kind of the next horizon, what is about to come, and about the monetization things. And two things I really want to touch upon is this 3-word combination called NFTs, which there has been kind of a lot of speculation around. And if I'm correct, then Switzerland is one of the places where cryptocurrency is very well semi-legally approached. But I think can you a little bit kind of walk through what possibilities the NFTs could actually give? Well, first of all, what they are very quickly and what they would give to independent producers. I think one of the striking things for me is to think that if my 12-year-old son doesn't want to buy any more printed posters, but he might be very happy of having a originally signed poster in his digital wallet somewhere in his world, right? So NFTs, and then we also a little bit have to talk about what is happening in the meta world, right? Where this is heading.
Of course.
So what's your take?
Very exciting topic.
What's your take on NFTs and how that could actually come and help the film industry?
There's several folds is the answer for NFTs. And just to simplify it, if you think about in the traditional world today where we live in now, where we go to a concert, we buy a ticket, when we love somebody's art, we buy it and put it on our walls. And that all happens in the physical space. Then NFTs enables you to do all of these activities, to own assets, own access in the digital space, which has not been able, we've been not able to do that before. And the second thing that it enables is that then we wouldn't be beholden to the platforms like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok to hold our content and our rights, meaning that anything that we upload today to those platforms, they control the access to that content. But once we, let's say, create a video or create a piece of art and we attach an NFT to it, we control the access. So only individuals with having that NFT in the wallet will be able to see that content, or we can build whatever we want into the contract. They can own it, they can rent it, they can use it for a short period of time, or they can have an indefinite access, or they can resell it to somebody else. It just enables that digital economy and digital asset ownership on online platforms. So let's think about it. For example, you said like your kids might love today have a T-shirt of certain brand or care about wearing it. That was 10 years ago. Now kids couldn't care less. And like what happens in the physical world, they care so much more about what happens in Fortnite or Roblox, whereby you would go to the game and, for example, what you wear there, you show that to your friends so much more than you show it in real life. And that's so much more important. Therefore, you're willing to invest in owning digital assets, whether it's skins or it's accessories or it's shirts or it's experiences. NFTs enable those digital transactions and ownership of those items in the digital world. So therefore, we see that the economy for digital items has already grown massively. I mean, just look at the Lil Nas concerts on Roblox, where he sold for more than $10 million worth of merchandise. Like, he would never sell as much on a single concert in the physical world, but he did in the digital space, where you could only during that concert get that shirt, but you could wear it anywhere. You can wear it across other experiences. You can show it off to your friends, and it is yours. So what it enables is that true ownership of digital assets also takes control away from somebody, a platform holding your assets, but you would hold them in your own wallet and make it available to the platforms that you want to participate in. And then we have this behavioral shift of people starting to value their relationships online a lot more and the experiences online a lot more, and therefore willing to invest there more than necessarily buying a new T-shirt. They would rather buy a new skin to their avatar. So then I would probably think about original soundtrack from the production, signed still shots from your DOP, exclusive clips from the film, posters, yes, we talked about, and some other digital memorabilia as well. I just have to mention very quickly. Absolutely, that's one thing which is the core is like, yes, you can create a lot of digital art, But the great thing to make it even more sticky is to think about the digital utility on top of that. So once I own, let's say, that soundtrack of a movie, or that kind of clip that has become a classic, and you could actually have your name attached to it, or becoming executive producer by owning a piece of the movie. Like, there's so many ways where you can, yes, create digital art, but then think about the utility as well. Maybe you get early access because you hold that token. Maybe you get access to a community where you could already start seeing some pre-screenings before the movie comes out because you invested in the NFT. So it's not just the art, just taking, as the early days of web used to be, people just took the brochures and put it on a website and called it a website. But websites evolved into something where you can do so much more, where you can have a two-way conversation. So think about the same way with NFTs. Like, yes, number one step is take every art that you can and then make it available to your fans to invest. And that's a way to make money. And a lot of artists are now just starting to make money because they were never able to do that in the physical world, but digital world opened up the canvas for them to earn money. And then think about the utility of the back of that, meaning like, what can you provide them that goes beyond the art piece that they can also experience?
So just one word of warning to the producers: if you don't already have an NFT agreement with your set designer or your VFX guy, have it. There are already court cases where people working on special effects and VFX have actually started to monetize their set concepts and so forth. So as a smart producer, think about what you put into your contracts. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. So I want to give 3 points on this, 4 words or 4 syllables, META, which was announced.
What's that?
Yeah, what's that? Yeah, exactly. What's Meta? I think we all saw the news. So give us like your 4 very quick takes on where this will lead us and how that's going to influence also cinema.
Meta is a new step in computing. In a similar way, when you think about how the world moved from the early days of the 90s internet and the portals that was enabled by instant messaging and emails and all the standards, to the world that we're in now, which is the mobile internet world, which enabled streaming platforms like Netflix, or even music streaming like Spotify through the connection that we have on our phone. We're now entering into a new era of computing, which is going to be formed by the developments in the hardware side, where we're starting to have those immersive headsets, but also glasses. And then we're going to have software to enable creators to create content within these worlds. And we're going to have the digital economies, which we talked about briefly, about NFTs, when people can adopt and own digital assets that are transferable across platforms. And then we see the user behavior shifting as well, where people are happily now meeting and hanging out with people in the digital worlds. Like, the data point was that almost 60% of the couples now meet online, and that change has just happened in the last 10 years and definitely accelerated by the current situation as well. So Meta is really a bet from the mobile internet company to own the next computing platform and build it around those 4 pillars that we talked about, like have their say in what the hardware should look like, and they were subsidizing their development with a Oculus Quest or Horizon Quest headsets, and focusing very much on the software side and enabling creative tools and creator tools to build on those platforms, and building their own wallets, crypto wallets, so that the digital transactions can happen on those platforms and creators can earn and make money there. All of that to educate their users and train the user behavior to move forward into this fully immersive embodied internet in a 3D space where things are persistent and we can actually feel that we're present synchronously with other people in the same space. So it's really a bet for the future. And if you think about it, yes, Meta is one of the businesses who is focusing on that. Microsoft similarly is attacking that space very hard because it really is a new canvas. Everybody who missed out on the mobile internet side, literally everybody besides Apple and Google, is now trying to be the next platform for the internet. And what does it mean for filmmakers? It means everything from creation to distribution is changing. You have new canvas, new open opportunities. And once you enter early, the benefit of entering early is that there's less competition, and the platforms are more interested in showcasing you on those platforms. So whether it is NFT side and building creative assets or digital assets for those platforms, or it's actually creating content, whether it is going to be, you know, assets in the 3D world. We will, I'm sure, have like set designers in the digital space who are going to create the Horizon home and Horizon worlds that we will see in these spaces.
Swiss films in metaverse, I guess.
Could and should easily happen. Like, I would much rather be with you on a, you know, kind of fully immersed present in the space with you in the same room, rather than look at the 2D screen here. So for sure, it will have an impact on the cinemas as well as the events as well.
Okay, we have to extract this promise. So if I have the kind of core takeaways, times are changing very fast. I think we have to overcome the barriers between the platforms. There are really interesting ways of money coming in, really from a kind of a pragmatic point. And last question, so what's the time horizon? When shall we have the next GDM in Metaverse? Give me a number.
There's similarly as with mobile internet, there is not going to be, you know, that instant shift of like, now we're in this new world. It's going to happen sequentially, and it will be initially available across all of the existing screens as well, which it already is. Like, I think that people who are early there are already having meetings in the metaverse. I don't think we're necessarily going to call it the metaverse per se. This is the best imagination we can come up with. You know, it's like the information highway for the early days of the internet. I think that's a kind of term. But I think the shift is going to happen much quicker than we think, mostly because the digital economy is changing much quicker than we've seen before, as well as the leaps in hardware have already generally happened. A lot of it are subsidized by those big platforms who want to be the next big player. So I think that within the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, we will all have a very accessible way to get into a fully immersed digital space, not just with our screens and computers and phones that we have today, but it will be like a second nature. It will be the better version of your PC. It will be the better version of your mobile when you're walking around. And then it will just keep getting better after that, while the physical world and the digital world completely merge, because that is the new reality. There is going to be no difference between what you call a reality and not a reality today, how people view it. This is going to be all one reality.
So it's good. 3 years, that's actually one feature film. So let's all produce one feature film and then have the premiere in Metaverse. So thanks so much, Sander, joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you.
And you have a promise to come back to Geneva to do a workshop for the producers and platforms for next year. Thanks. All right.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Now is the chance of having the last questions. We have here Augustina, David, Birgit, and Ben. They're very happy to interact with you. I know it's been a long day, but it's a chance of asking questions. Does anybody have any reflections, questions, feedback, help? Where can I get your business card? Will you come advise me on the strategy? Are you lying, or you actually can help me out? How can I prepare my assets, and etc.? This is the chance to ask it. Gentleman there was in the middle. Could we get a microphone? Yeah, well, come over. And Sander is also joining us. I think he's still with us from Los Angeles. So if you want to disagree with him or have a small fight, it's also allowed. You can also pose a question for gentlemen, please.
I'm an expert producer to immersive technologies. So all of you talk about films, but no one of you talk about experience or immersive experience. So I would like to know if you have already worked in any of those projects, and this data you are talking about and the insights, you already are able to get insights about the audiences in immersive technologies experiences that are part of the metaverse.
So is that a question for Sander?
If any one of them has worked with XR experience and using insight data to found the audiences, and it's this information already there.
So
you have no information.
Yeah. So if I rephrase the question, so has anyone worked with immersive media, and have they have experiences on building data pipelines for immersive media? Anyone here? Or Ben, you want to answer? Or
we've worked with gaming, and we've also worked with some projects to do with VR. Again, it's just down to the storytelling. Who's the film or the production for, the game for, and having that research in place early on. So yeah, the fundamentals of what we're talking about are absolutely applicable to whatever the content medium is, whether it be a TV show, a film, a game, an immersive experience, a music or rock concert. Again, it's the definition of the audience and what motivates them.
I mean, one other comment is, how many people here play computer games? Okay, anybody has played Death Stranding? Anybody has played Ghost of Tsushima? Anybody has played last one of us? So here's the thing, Death Stranding, I'm just going to give kind of an experience where the metaverse, or those two worlds are kind of colliding. Death Stranding is a 67-hour game on life and death that came out of a Japanese studio, directed by Hideo Kojima, who is being considered as one of the greatest game directors ever. The game has quite an interesting cast. Léa Seydoux, Mads Mikkelsen, Guillermo del Toro, Nicolas Winding Refn, and then the gentleman who played the lead in the
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. Photorealistically shot with a DOP, amazing performances, like a 67-hour film. Very hard to tell, is this a game? Only thing is that you can drive the main character and so forth. Last one of us, I think Domenico Laporta, who has been mentoring in Switzerland as well, great script consultant. It's basically a survival game, but more of a mediation of violence. It was one of the, I would say, the most powerful narrative experiences ever had. Right now being made into a TV series by HBO with Pedro Pascal starting as a lead.
Wow.
The last one is Ghost of Tsushima. It's a story about the samurai in the 13th century Japan, done on an island of Tsushima, which is a real island. Fastest selling original game in PlayStation's history, produced together with the Akira Kurosawa Foundation. So it looks like a proper black and white samurai film. Highly recommend to go check the trailers. So we are, I think, past really the area where games and...
You could also talk about Adam, the series from the South African director Blomkamp.
Yeah, Neil.
Does anyone check that out on I think it's on Prime? So Blomkamp released a whole artistic universe, just exploring, various narratives. He didn't release any movies around it, but it was just, using the Unity platform within gaming to test some storyboard ideas. He managed to get Sigourney Weaver and a few other actors involved, and they, I think, just had a lot of fun putting this together.
There's parts of it is in Netflix as well.
It's on Netflix as well, isn't it? Okay, yeah, but that's excellent to check out.
Sander, any insights for you on audiences and data on immersive platforms? I know that you have worked with XR quite a bit for some of your clients.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a lot of exciting development happening both ways, where there's, as you said, like a lot of the big movies and directors who are building now on gaming platforms, and it's known for most musicians now that their goal is not to get, as it used to be have their soundtrack on a theatrical release. Now most of the biggest music producers are focusing on just building it for some of the largest games. And if you think about, I think Netflix is a case study, as an example of that, is especially the merger between gaming and shows, is they're going both ways. They're taking games, for example, like League of Legends, and they're turning them into Netflix series, like the Arcane, that is currently in production, and some of it is already out. And it's happening the other way around, where they're taking, existing IP, somewhere like Stranger Things, or Squid Game, and turning those into games. So they're really trying to cross over between those two worlds. And the same thing is happening also in the fully immersive world. Take somebody like Star Wars. Star Wars, yes, it is also a theatrical release, a movie. There's also a series, but it's also a location-based VR experience. But it's also a VR experience that you can have at home. I think there's just a complete merger, and the focus really is like, again, who has the audience, and the audience will travel for you for those experiences. Whether the audience is going to, come from YouTube and explore it there, whether they're going to do it in a headset or a theatrical release, they come with you.
Yes, so I think exactly that the traffic can start from any place, and a game can support a narrative film, and the film can also support a narrative game. We have time for a few more questions. Anybody else? A little bit more pragmatic, perhaps?
In any case, I'm taking your question to my team because I find it really interesting because we actually don't have those kind of assets from the data perspective, but I think it's something to consider now. Definitely, definitely. And I appreciate that you're starting to think with a data mindset because you need that data. I see now that.
Tomorrow we will be actually spending here the afternoon on not so much talking about data, but actually talking about tools and technologies for producers, directors, and storytellers. Nimrod Shanit, who is a very well-known Israeli television and film producer, will actually talk about his experience, The Holy City, which, at least to my knowledge, it's a film, but it's an XR experience, and to my own knowledge, it's the only production I know that has an imam, a priest, and a rabbi as producers. So how this project came about and how it evolves around the city of Jerusalem, we're going to talk about tomorrow in much more details. Any other questions from the audience?
I may have something to add here, is to see the very exciting discussions about the metaverse and all of those things, but a little bit more pragmatic maybe is, as you said, is that we see more and more interest in more other verticals, like games, of course, like sports, like sound, podcasts. So a story can live in all of these verticals, and you can find the audience across all of these different platforms. And that's a challenge today, how to make that happen in different ways, because you can own an IP for a podcast, and then there's a huge opportunity probably to do something more with it. How do you do that? How do you learn more about your audience on this podcast, and how can you grow it into stream, or how do you actually do it? And I think that's going to happen the coming year. And that's going to develop in a good way, and it's also a huge opportunity for storytellers, for IP rights holders, and the data people like us potentially.
So I know that already some producers are having rights for podcasts in their productions, because imagine that if you produce a film, it might be accessible on a platform, but you might be actually you want to put it out as a podcast for a certain type of an audience, which can actually serve as a teaser or an entry point into the feature film world as well.
Yeah.
I think to add to this, we are talking about IP and franchises and how we can grow something that it comes from a small seed, and then you can work with every channel. But I think Houston, you were at one of our industry sessions last week or the week before, and we were showing one example of a UK platform called Film2 that they started, and they still are a TVOD, a transactional VOD, but they found out reading data and doing some surveys and tracking their audiences, they found out that their audience was coming to the platform because they wanted to learn languages from audiovisual content. So they were choosing to subscribe to the VOD because they wanted to learn global languages or different languages. So they decided to build an educational platform, a gaming platform for students, to build a bridge between audiovisual and learning something which is languages. So again, it's how we connect with these data assets that we get, and how we can build these business opportunities around the content we have and the opportunities we can build again using this information. That's why I think it's relevant, because it's, again, IP.
So on this light note, I think everybody's so excited. I think I've learned today that Swiss and Estonian are very similar. How do you recognize, or an Estonian Finn, that they are excited? I'm excited. So thank you so much for coming. I'd like to finalize on this really interesting quote that in God we trust, everybody else bring data. We have the wonderful guests, Augustina, David, Birgit, Ben, and Sander in there. You have a chance. No. You have a chance to talk to people in private. Yes. Technical team already telling, close this thing. Okay, so thanks so much for attending. I hope you enjoyed the day, enjoyed the festival, and I see you here tomorrow. And questions in private. Thank you very much.
Thank you.